everyone, namaskar, and a warm, very nice welcome to this webinar 139, which we are calling Out of the Box, and which is being held on 25th August, and it's a wonderful Friday to begin with. A warm welcome also because all of you have logged in on time, and we promise you that the schedule will be as per planned. And I think on this note, I would like to mention that all our speakers today really exemplify what is meant by thinking out of the box. If I could take 1 minute, in today's challenges of excellent design and construction processes, both engineers and architects often find that peripheral activities are taking up the time that should rightfully go to design, innovation, focused work. Hence, it's essential to keep employing strategies, and this is where thinking out of the box comes into play. So without further ado, I would like to hand over the mic to Jain Kulkarni sir, and before that to Viha, who will introduce him. And before I take a break, this is a box that I have, and I'm very eager to say what's going to come out of it. On this note, Viha, over to you. And once again, a warm welcome to all the people who have logged on. I'm very happy to inform you that in this audience, you'll find students, you'll find professionals, you'll find young architects, engineers who are just about to start practice. And of course, I have to say this, I'm sitting in Pune, somebody is sitting in Mumbai, and we really are all connected on this Friday, 25th August, through the webinar 139, which is Out of the Box. Over to you, Viha.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I'll introduce our founder member and managing director, Mr. Jayant Kulkarni. He is BE Civil from VJTI. Further, he pursued masters from the same university. He has specific areas of interest. His Codal provision, seismic retrofitting, tall buildings, concrete mix design, advanced entity and evaluation, conservation of heritage structures, Indian aesthetics and construction chemicals. Company has successfully completed more than 8,500 projects under his technical and administrative head in multiple avenues of civil engineering like structural design, project management consultancy, architecture and detail engineering, assessment, testing, and infra. Company has received many prestigious awards. The most respected award is Industry Excellence Award from Institute of Engineers. Now I'll introduce our moderator, Mr. P.P. Pandey. He is BE Civil in 1982. He is working with Epicons consultant since 2003 as a senior GM project. He is handling project management department. He is a hardcore concrete technologist. He has more than 40 years of experience in the field of bridges, piling, infrastructure development, and greenfield projects of various categories like residential, commercial, institutional, and industrial. He has hands-on experience of repairs and rehabilitation, forensics NDT, and use of construction chemicals. Now I request Jayan sir to introduce EFC. Sir, you are mute.
आप म्यूट हैं सर.
Good afternoon, everyone. I welcome you on behalf of Epicon Friends of Concrete. This knowledge sharing platform since 1999. This activity is conducted under umbrella of Epicon's consultant, which is ISO 9001 2015 certified company, and one of the defined objective is imparting knowledge to society as well as interested parties. Next. This activity started much before 1999. Our principal inspiration is late engineer Mr. A.P. Remedios. Next. EFC has conducted 81 workshops till date in last 22 years and 38 webinars in last 2 years. Started webinar series since lockdown through our unit EFC dedicated to training. EFC is an humble effort to create knowledge sharing platform and develop a facility for continued education for practicing structural engineers, corporate consultant, government, semi-government authorities, architects, builder, and of course, faculty and student. And our thought leaders, of course, all my thought leaders are my gurus who taught me in college. It starts with Dr. V.N. Gupchup, who was Pro-Vice Chancellor and Principal then. Subsequently, Professor S. Sundaram, Professor M.G. Gargi, who still actively participates in many of our workshops and webinars. Engineer Himanshu Raze, he had been discussing with me quite a lot. And Samir Surlekar, he had been speaker to many of our workshops and webinars. And now let us look at the graph of Epicon Friends of Concrete. Today, we are at webinar 139, Thinking Out of Box on 25th August, whereas what we are planning is an evening with Master Engineers, celebrating Engineers Day on 16th September. With this, I'll just introduce my team. Apart from myself, we have Anand Kulkarni, Ravindra Deshpande, Arvind Parvekar, Mr. Parashar Moghe, and P.P. Pandey, who always and continuously get involved in all the workshops and webinars. And not only that, our entire team, staff is also involved. So I thank you as well as thank our AFC team. And with this, I complete introduction of AFC.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Good evening, friends. I'm Priya Gokhale, and I run a company called Wide Angle Forum. As you can see on your screen, it's an acronym for Working in Design and Enterprise. Next slide, please. So what does this mean? Essentially, it means that we work in 5 areas. The first is, of course, what generally we call events. We like to call them programs, and we have done around 350 programs in the last 7 years across the segments that you see on screens. So whether it is a presentation and all that, we have done a lot. Then this is a magazine which goes pan-India to lots of professionals it goes, and it's called Design Vista. This magazine is particularly important to give visibility to new and interesting projects. Then we have an academy called Aspire Academy. In this, we help youngsters, we conduct workshops, and I'm very happy to say that thanks to Epicons, we have been able to be part of whatever Epicons Friends of Concrete is doing. Then we have a program called Suffer Tours, where we have a lot of fun. We go together to very interesting places, we get experiences, and we become good friends too. And last and very important is that we are also bona fide publishers now. So if any of you wants to pen a memoir or you want to write your experiences, well, you can contact us. We would love to be with you. So to end my short presentation of Wide Angle Forum, friends, let's be together in exploring the various destinations of design and enterprise. Thank you very much. Over to you, Jayan sir.
Good afternoon once again. Good afternoon to all the speakers, senior and participants. I welcome you once again on behalf of Epicon Friends of Concrete. Today's webinar has a peculiar structure. This has 2 parts. One is sustainability through innovative thinking, and second is legal framework for professionals. Now you must be thinking why and how we have selected this subject. Initially, our idea was to conduct a webinar with entire team of young faculties, maybe first generation practitioner or maybe second generation in the respective field of practice. That way, I have a list of more than 10 practicing speakers, faculties with me. However, it was difficult to find a common theme of the entire webinar. Also, it was difficult to get a common day which is convenient to everyone. So finally, we are meeting today with 5 speakers in 2 parts. The idea behind getting young and new speakers is understanding the future trends and style of thinking of young generation. You might have heard, you might not have heard a lecture from many of them. They are speaking for the first time. Though the title says innovative thinking and sustainability, it is both technical and management thinking. We are witnessing the changes, and many of the companies, either manufacturing or engineering consultancy, are now led by next generation representatives. Now, probably we have understood how the young generation is thinking and expressing. Now, part two, legal framework. This is very important subject. In fact, this subject is worth introducing in academic curriculum of all architectural and engineering colleges. There has to be some knowledge or some glimpses of this subject. This subject is worth for minimum 2 full days discussion, and we are trying to initiate this topic and raise a curiosity in the mind of participant. This is the only objective for today's webinar. We can work on this in detail further. Now, going back to our original idea, we will work for next 2-3 months and try to organize a physical workshop dedicated to young generation speakers, and we'll expect all of you to attend. Meanwhile, as explained earlier, we will be celebrating Engineers Day on 16th September with a talk with Masters in Engineering. With this, I complete my preamble. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So, friends, now is the time when I have the honor of introducing our first speaker for today. In a happy understanding, I'll be interviewing her, but before that, let me introduce her to all of you. Yes, I'm talking about engineer Tanvi Auti. A formal introduction is necessary. Engineer Tanvi Auti, who is the MD of Dhruv Consultancy Services Private Limited. After 3 years of experience as a trainee engineer in the infrastructure field with Hiranandani Constructions and Simplex Infrastructure Limited, Tanvi took over the reins of Dhruv Consultancy Services Limited. As MD, she heads and leads the operations, finance, and business development departments with, one can say, a high performance team of more than 350. She has completed several complex projects involving large stakeholders. In fact, setting up the HR department, introducing financial management policies, incorporating emerging technologies are some crucial measures implemented under her direction. Her focus on the core values of strategic planning added new dimensions to the business and led to a double turnover in the last 2 years, accelerating the profits, obviously. Launching an IPO in 2008 in coordination with investment bankers, investors, company secretary, chartered accountants, and all stakeholders was certainly a major step that has many platforms now inviting Tanvi to speak on her views on management. We are very happy, Tanvi, to have you with us. Today, Engineer Tanvi will speak with me, Priya Gokhale, on her journey and the application of sound management skills, especially in running a company that is so technology and human effort driven. We have called this Next Gen with Next Level Management Skills. Tanvi, welcome. You can just say a hi to the audience and then we will begin.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to thank Priya ma'am and Jain sir for giving me this opportunity. And it seems to be a very enthusiastic young audience, and I'm looking forward to have a great conversation with all of you.
Thank you, Tanvi. So, friends, Tanvi, can we begin the interview?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
In fact, I'm very happy to tell you that today there is a considerably large number of students who I would say are in a very impressionable and very important juncture in their lives. For example, the first year to fourth year, one would say, is an important part of molding your personality as far as being an architect or an engineer. So I'm sure they are holding on to every word that you're saying. So anyway, here goes. Tanvi, welcome to this gathering. First, I would immediately like to ask you, could you describe and how would you describe the management structure of your company and also a little about Dhruv Consultancy Services?
Okay, so I'll give the introduction first. So Dhruv Consultancy, many of you must definitely have heard about the company. This was established in 2003 by my father, Mr. Pandurang Dandavate. He is a retired government officer from the Public Works Department, Government of Maharashtra. And in 2003, he took a voluntary retirement and started this company. For the initial first 2 or 3 years, the company was working with a few private clients, then local municipal corporations, state governments, etc. In 2006, the company bagged its first major assignment of the Bhiwandi Kalyani Fata Road. So that was by Plus Expressways Berhad. It's a Malaysian company. And since then, our growth trajectory started. After that, till 2013, we were working with the Public Works Departments, Government of Maharashtra, MSRDC, MMRDA. In 2013, we got ourselves eligible for working with the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways and the NHI, National Authority of India. We got ourselves empaneled, and as we all know that what infrastructure development, how it has boomed in the past 10 years in the country. All of us are witness to it, and this is a golden era of infrastructure development in the country. In 2015, I joined the company as an assistant engineer first, and I started looking after the project. So at that time, the turnover was close to 15 crores. Then in 2016, we started working for DPR, for preparation of DPR for the central government, carrying out the feasibility study. For those who don't know what is a DPR. And after that, we took up supervision assignments in 2017 onwards. That is when we decided to come with our IPO, and successfully launched our IPO in 2018 on BSE SME platform. And believe me, I had no team of chartered accountants, no company secretary to help. With a team of qualified engineers with me, this IPO was done in 2013, got ourselves listed on BSE, and in 2021 on NSE. So there is no limit to what engineers can do, and how they can be helpful in any stream, in wherever in the world. Since then, it became a responsibility towards our investors. From 2007 or 8 onwards itself, we started hiring engineers from different colleges across Maharashtra. And after that, when I came into the company, I started creating departments. So earlier it was only one accounts department, and the management taking care of the entire operations. So I started setting up a different finance accounts department, a different HR department, operations department, business development, sales, and within operations also different legal departments, secretarial departments. So first we identified those departments, and after that we started hiring second line of leaders. So as a company, like I am a second generation entrepreneur, it is very important to have a second line of leaders in place. So for every department in our organization, we have a head, a vice president operations, vice president, we have a CEO, we have a chief technical officer, chief operating officer who head the entire operations. Then we have business development executives, we have company secretaries, compliance officers, legal department, chief financial officer. So all this entire company started as a family owned business with just 4 employees. Today spread across 21 states in the nation, with 400 employees working across the length and breadth of the country, and entirely handled by the second line of leaders and the management. So this is the overall
Wow.
structure
Yes.
of the company.
Thank you, Tanvi. You took us literally through the entire process in which you have done the structure also, and
Yes.
the general makeup of the company also, what departments does what exactly. So in fact, you answered the question which I was about to ask. Now,
Yeah.
I would like to ask you a question which is a byproduct of this. We all know that as MD, there is a massive amount of responsibility on your shoulders, because not only are you the CEO, so to speak, but responsible for the well-being of the staff, having a good work culture, and of course,
Yes.
the brand image of the company. So, can you elaborate on how your specific role applies not only to the growth trajectory, which you explained in a very elaborate fashion now, But this very fashionable word which is called work culture, every company has its own work culture, which is
Yes.
very much in the news for the good and the bad reasons. Can you
Right.
elaborate on how you keep your work culture professional also and well happy also at the same time, if I may
Uh-huh.
say so?
Yes, yes. So it's a very good and interesting question that you have asked. So let me divide it into three parts. First, I'll talk to you about the culture. So when it comes to work culture, now today's generation is more inclined towards having a free culture, having a friendly atmosphere, a professional atmosphere. So for any organization who is either who is on its growth trajectory or for even a startup for that matter, work culture is of prime importance. So when it comes to work culture, first thing that comes is relationships. Maintaining a responsive relationship with your employees or with all the stakeholders. Second thing is having a resourceful state of energy uh, within the organization. There should be unconditional commitment within your employees, and there should be performance. So performance, if all this is there, automatically performance comes, and then you get extraordinary results from it. So everything in the organization goes down to the culture for having a good culture. So it comes from top to the bottom. So my father has, since incorporation itself, he has started this company with great values, having employee first mindset. So we care for our employees. Being a civil engineering company, 80% of our head office workforce are women employees. So we don't create that gender bias wherein okay, men can only work in civil engineering um uh, uh, for highway projects also. Now today, if you go outside the country, you can see women working on the road. And today's women, they are really inspiring, and they can go to any extent. They are standing equal to men. So having that no bias regarding the gender is a very important part of the culture. Then comes having flexible policies. So we have a lot of employee friendly policies. We do allow good maternity breaks. Then we don't try to ask anyone, acha, why you came at 11 o'clock or why you came at 11:30. As long as okay, people can have emergencies. Mumbai's traffic is another thing. So having those flexible kind of policies, we give them medical insurances from the company. Of course, there is PF, there is ESIC, there are different COVID benefits given to the employee. So not one employee during the COVID was denied their salary in the company. And all houses were run with 100% salary. Of course, there was a slight delay, but we had management was very keen on giving that salary in a timely manner to everyone. Then comes talent retention. So I am very proud to say that the my attrition rate, actually the industry attrition rate, if you see, is quite high, but I am proud to say that my attrition rate is 4 or 5%.
Wow.
So the employees that have most of the employees who are working with me are in their first jobs even today, and
Wow.
it's been 10 years, 15 years, they are still there, and I know for a fact that they are going to be there with us. So it is very important to have such people with you who work with an ownership feeling, and for these employees the happiness quotient is very high. So all these things form a very are a very important part of having a good work culture within the organization. People can anytime come up to me, they can express themselves.
Okay.
So I be approachable, me or my
Yes.
father.
Yes.
We are always approachable to our employees. Whatever it is, anything they want to speak, they can anytime come to us, and we go to any extent to sort out their issues and give them the flexibility that is required. The
Wow.
second part of your question is the brand image that you asked.
Yes.
So employees are the brand. Okay, so when I am speaking about my company, that is one thing. But when an employee is speaking about my company, it definitely makes a difference. So for me as a business owner, I create strategies, but the implementation is being done by those employees. So I try to maintain a strong internal communication, a strong external communication also with my stakeholders, whether it is my clients, my customers, or my investors. We have kept that channel open so as to have a good brand image. And of course, employee appreciation is there at every level. My employees, every year they enjoy perks like going for foreign trips,
Wow.
either with or without their families. We have employee of the month, employee of the year, we have annual celebrations, festival celebrations. So all these things go hand in hand. And most important thing is the well-being of the employees that you asked me.
Yes.
I invest a lot on training and development of these employees. So it's not just technical training, it is their grooming, their confidence building, their communication skills, and most important is their mental well-being. In For today's generation, I think most importance should be given to mental well-being. Me being from the millennial generation,
Yeah. Yeah.
I take care of issues such as stress management also. And I literally send my employees to renowned psychologists to help them out with their issues. And I have seen tremendous performance improvements uh, if only the mental well-being is tackled. So whenever it comes to my employees, I don't think about what investment I have to do, but the output is amazing if you only invest in the learning and development of that
Yeah.
employee. So you do one for the employee gives you 10.
Yeah.
So
That's
yeah.
so really something. I mean, you really took us. My next question was exactly about that, and you
Okay.
answered that.
Yeah.
Now, Tanvi, we are midway through this interview. We have half an hour, and I'm sure
Yeah.
there are many things which people will want to ask you. Now,
Yes.
my question is very specific, and it is meant for a large number of people in the audience,
Yes.
many of whom are part of what we nowadays call as legacy firms. So, for
Yes.
example, the father is an architect or an engineer, maybe
Mm.
even the grandfather. So, second generation, third generation firms, and though it's not about whether you want to follow what your parents are doing, it's not about that. My
Mm.
question is like this: that uh, that phase when you came out of college from MIT Pune, and then your father called you and he said you have to manage the company. So, how much credit would you put to your seniors advising you, your team advising you, the people around you listening to the right things, dumping the wrong things? So,
Mm.
how do you decide exactly how to go? Just give us a roadmap. Imagine that there is
Yes.
somebody who has met you and similar
Yes.
situation. What advice, let's say 10 commandments, would you give that person?
Yes. Okay. Okay. So this is something that is very close to my heart, and I would definitely want this thought to reach more people. So first thing that when my father told me that okay, from tomorrow you have to, it was literally like that, that from tomorrow you have to become the managing director. So I'm like, okay, I am a 23-year-old. How can I become the managing director? Yes, being the daughter of the owner, I definitely had that expectation. Okay, someday I have to take over the reins. But as a 23-year-old, I did not expect that. So one thing that my father told me at that time, I said, what if people try to take advantage of my inexperience, of my lack of knowledge, or I'm still growing? Learning never stops. So he told me that good decisions will give you success, but bad decisions will give you experiences. So always remember those experiences and go ahead. And at every step, I learned this from my principal at my college. So since my college days, I've been involved in a lot of management activities, and I was the general secretary there also. So I've learned a lot in my college life and from my principal there. So he was always approachable. So whether it is any student, his cabin doors were always open. I could go anytime, walk to him, and so that was the first step towards that learning. Now things cannot happen in one day. Of course, I had to take different small steps. um First thing that my father did for me is uh, he appointed good mentors for me who could um in every sector. So whether it is my say my technical training, my confidence building, life coach, business coach. So all these mentors were selected by him. So I had amazing mentors, and there was so much to learn from my father itself. I spent only 3 years only observing. So I observed my father, what all senior employees in the organization, even the engineers who were 10 years more experienced than me. So I spent a lot of time sitting with them, sitting beside them, and just observing them. Because the slower you go, the more in depth you go, the more understanding you get. So when I think after 3 years itself, we decided, when I came into the organization, we decided to go for an IPO. And like I said, I had no chartered accountant, no company secretary, or no expert in these fields. My father just told me we have to go for an IPO, otherwise we won't be able to take up new works. We need capital. So I literally took that sheet. I dissected all the points, tried to gain from good experts. Then from industry, I could talk to different chartered accountants, try to understand. So morning 10 o'clock to whether it is night 1 a.m., 3 a.m., I was sitting in the office completing all the IPO work along with my team. And one IPO that I did, I got a complete picture of the past 10 years of the company and what changes are to be done in the company to make it, to grow it at a next level. So that was a very big learning from me, that as a, okay, tomorrow if I would have been in a job, so I would have been in a specific role. But when I'm the owner of the company, I have to take care of finance, operations, administration, HR, everything. So I found all those things very interesting. As for all fresh graduates out there, I would like to tell you that all these departments you get access when you are a business owner. Of course, as an employee also, my employees today, I can tell you, they work like they are the business owners in the company.
Wow.
So they never look at it as a 9 to 5 job. So whether you're doing a job or whether you're doing a business, you have to do the work like it's your own. So I will not say that okay, business is good or job is good. Both the things are necessary, but you have to take it up as it's your own work, and always focus on learning and development. So even today, I keep on thinking, what better can I do? What better can I do? What better can I do? And I try to take the training myself. I try to implement it at my level and then at the company's level, so that learning should never stop. And with age, then slowly it there comes maturity, and then you with experience there comes more maturity. So I think this is how you can grow yourself.
Superb, Tanvi. I love the way you said, you directly address anybody who's going through this probably as we speak.
Yes.
Just two questions now, which we have,
Yes.
considering the time remaining. One of those questions is
Hmm.
that everybody nowadays goes on about this demographic dividend that we have. We have a strong youth which has no colonial hangover. We have the facilities which anybody in the world have. We are lucky to have a support system in India, our family, our extended family, and all the encouragement that we need, we have. My question is very specific, that there are thousands of 20, 30 somethings out there who feel, I would say, almost lured or tempted by the prospect of having a start or running a business or being an entrepreneur or being self-employed. It sounds very glamorous and it sounds rather exciting. The media also creates an impression that there is nothing more glamorous and fulfilling than being your own boss, thanks to all these programs and reality shows also. However, we know that one also needs to tread with caution, especially after the stories of startups faltering. Could you throw some light quickly and give us your frank advice on this before we move on to the next question?
Yes. So, like I said this was actually I answered in my previous one also, that it is about the mindset. Okay, so whether it is a job or whether it is a startup or whether you're heading a legacy business, whatever it is, most important thing is your attitude towards your work. Okay, if you have a vision, and if you are not doing that work with ownership, so then yes, like you said, that startups are faltering, it is mainly because of that, but it can happen in a job also. That if who would not want such an employee who is working beyond beyond their own capacity, working like it's his own job? Everyone would want such employee. I'm proud to say that I have such employees. So like I said, that whether job or whether MSME owner, the most important thing is that you have to work like it's your own. You have to consider that it's my business, it's not theirs. So actually, we being a listed company, we have that advantage of giving ESOPs also. So when you give a share ownership share to your employees, they are officially the shareholders and the owners of the company. So listed companies do that, and then my employee can proudly say, who's the owner of your company? I am the owner of the company. So that vision and that ownership feeling is the most important thing that I feel that should be there, whether you're an employee or whether you're a business owner, or as a startup or an MSME owner. And continuous learning and development. If you invest in your own learning, first your personal goals should be aligned to your business goals. So if there is a mismatch there, and then things go for a toss. So learning and development mindset is very important.
Thank you very much for that, Tanvi. Now, my last question is again made up of two parts.
Yes.
The first part is that there are many students today who are really passionate about what they're doing, but sometimes they feel that, well, college is after all college, and after the 4 years are over, we'll start afresh and think what is to be done. So, my question is again very short and very specific. How much importance, on a scale of 1 to 10 maybe, do you give to taking the college years very seriously, regardless of what you're going to be doing after your college? And the second question is for the elders out there who want very much to know, what is your vision after today? Let's say if you were to be asked, what is your vision for your company and for the nation and for what India is going to be in 20 years? How would you answer to that? So you can answer to both questions simultaneously or separately.
Okay, I'll answer to the first part for the students. So, yes, college years are very important. Like I said, that I developed my management skills in my college life. So, we do acha fest hai 2 दिन छुट्टी मिलेगा. It's not that. There is lot of learning behind that cultural, technical, or sports fest, whatever you like. Just go and participate. Since my school days, one thing that I always did was go and participate, whatever the outcome, whether I win it or I don't win it. But participation is very important. That helped me like anything. Okay, maybe I was not getting any awards or getting any first prize or second prize in school days, but I used to observe who got that first prize, who got the second prize, and there was so much to learn. So there is no beautiful way than your education, whether it is your school, your college. Participate in everything that is there. That so there are, I think, inter-college fests also going on. You give a presentation and you see your confidence soaring high when you talk in front of 400, 500 students from other colleges. So all students should do that and take those 4 years very seriously. Yes, there is a gap between the education and the industry even today. There have been a lot of initiatives taken towards bridging that gap, but there is a change required in the curriculum. But then your basics become very clear. So that importance of that basics that you get in those 4 years of your engineering or your architecture is very important. So education is to be taken seriously. Second, you asked me for the vision that I have for the company. So today, this year, in all probabilities, we would become 100 crore company. And going like we know the vision with which Honorable Minister Gadkari ji is going now, cable cars and ropeways, and there is no end to infrastructure development that is happening in the country with such large terrains, coastal, mountainous, everything that is there. So all the students, all the business owners, or whoever is attending today, be proud of yourself that this is the golden era of Indian infrastructure development in the country, and we should take maximum advantage of this. Today, whoever, even an intern coming in my organization, is getting to work on an 8-lane expressway project, which I think my father also did not get that opportunity. So this is the vision with which Gadkari sir, Modi ji, that they have is immense, and there is so much to look forward in India itself. Talking about my company, in the next 20 years, I am in the process of taking my company global. So I want Dhruv Consultancy to become a global name. We have been targeting assignments in Africa, in Southeast Asian countries, Cambodia, Vietnam, Nepal, Bangladesh. So these are also developing economies, and a lot of funding by the Asian Development Bank, World Bank, African Development Bank is going on. There are a lot of Indian contractors and consultants working there. And not only in highways, I want to explore in the other sectors of infrastructure as well. We recently got a railways assignment also in Tamil Nadu for PMC work. So there is no end to infrastructure. When it comes to infrastructure, there is no end. So 20 years, definitely. Today it's 100 crores. I definitely want to take it to 5,000 crores. That's the vision I have.
Fantastic, Tanvi. So we come now to the end of this interview. I think
Yeah.
really I can go on for another hour, but time is a constraint.
Yes.
And I think what I'm happy about as the interviewer is that we have really gone through your journey, your vision, your thoughts, your frank, I won't say advice, but your views about how a millennial can really crack this difficult thing called challenges. Just a 1 minute we have, and I would like you to dwell on your passion of travel in a minute or two, please. It's my personal request.
Yeah, sure. So, for the most of you who don't know, I have my own travel blog. It's called as My Lux Voyage. So, me and my husband, now I've been married for 8 years. We started to start something together. So, when you're working as a business owner, it is very important to follow. As a business, also, I am passionate towards civil engineering, but traveling is something that is essential, and everyone should go on a vacation. Everyone
Wow.
should travel. Take those 10 days out. Nothing is going to stop. But the energy with which you come back and work, that is something else. So we do a lot of savings the whole year only to take a big trip and travel and share our travel experiences with whoever we want to. I know this generation is they want to travel the entire world, and we want to help them plan their trips or their itineraries. So this is a small initiative, not a business. It's just an initiative to share our experiences. That's it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, before I close, I would request Pandeji if he wants to ask a question, because Pandeji is also the moderator here, though this has been an interview. Pandeji, would you like to ask anything before we close? It's 4:29, so we have a couple of minutes more.
Priyaji, you have taken all the important
Oh, great.
answers
Okay.
for her. And she must be wondering how many questions she has to answer.
Yes, yes, true.
I'm happy to answer all questions.
Right, right. So, friends, ladies and gentlemen, everybody who's listening here, I just have one request of Tanvi, and then we will close this number one session. Tanvi, if any of our audience watching today who has registered for this webinar, if
Yes.
they want to officially meet you or reach out to you or
Yes.
communicate with you, are they allowed to do that? And what is the channel through which they can communicate?
Yes. So definitely, like I am approachable to my employees, I said I'm approachable to all of you. You can take note of my email ID. It's tanvi@dhruvconsultancy.in. You can drop me an email. I respond to all my emails. So it doesn't go into
Wow.
my spam or my junk or anything like that. I personally attend all my emails. And I have a YouTube channel also, Thinking It with Tanvi. So you can go and follow and post your questions there itself. So through that channel, I share my experiences, my learnings to help young entrepreneurs, to help young engineers, if anyone can gain insights from my experiences.
Thank you so much, Tanvi. And I think we come to the end of the first diamond that is coming out of my box here. Tanvi, thank you very much. And you can now listen to the others chatting. And thank you. This has been an extremely delightful interview. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you, Priyaji.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jain sir. Thank you, Priyaji.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just a minute. Give me a minute. Yes. So can we, Jain sir, can we go on to the next guest?
Yes, you go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So coming up, ladies and gentlemen, our next guest, let me just check the clock. Yeah, are we good on the time?
Priya ma'am, you take Varun Raje.
Okay, okay, yes. Fine. So our next guest, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome him, is Engineer Varun Raje, Executive Director, sorry, Raje Consultants. Varun Raje is a BE Civil, a graduate of Shivaji University, an experience of more than 5 years in the construction industry, in the project management, repairs, structural design streams. He spearheads the project management division of Raje Consultants. Of course, Varun has handled projects like five-star hotels, commercial buildings, high-rise residential towers, malls, SRA projects, structural audits for industries, and many diverse segments of the subtypes of these as well. Varun strongly believes in timely delivery of projects with maximum quality, and he staunchly makes sure that happens. Presently, Varun is involved in developing an in-house online software. He's also a member of several prestigious institutions, and really there is much more that can be said. But I'll just end by saying that today, Engineer Varun Raje will speak on project management for sustainability. It's quite a mouthful, Varun, so you will really have to take us through this entire explanation and meaning. Varun, over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. And I would like to first start my the presentation before by first saying thank you to Kulkarni sir for believing me and allowing me, giving me opportunity to present in such a big landscape. So basically, I am Varun Raje. As I've worked in the industry for last 17 years. I'm a civil engineer. I've done my masters from IIT, and I've done my MBA from NMIS. So today we'll be discussing about project management for sustainability. Uh, okay. So basically, as we understand, what is sustainability? Sustainability, as the definition is clear, it means something that has to run for a longer period, for a longer time. So in project management, as we all know, that the basic objective is to produce results in a project by understanding the client's objectives. Whereas when we talk about sustainable project management, It is basically application of methods, tools, and techniques to achieve the goals of the client or to complete the project by continuously monitoring the project and delivering at as per the requirements that are necessary. We usually follow the Deming cycle when we talk about sustainability, that is plan, do, check, act. That is a PDCA cycle. To planning is basically we organize the project, the plan or the schedule of the project. We start the project and then we check the project or we monitor the project and we evaluate all the parameters like in terms of time, cost, quality. And based on that, we act on the project or what decisions have to be taken to make the project sustainable. Okay. So okay, so what is sustainability in project management? It begins with the client brief and understanding what the client's brief, be a government call a client, it could be a private client. It all starts with the briefing of the client. What are the goals of the client? What is the necessary requirements of the client to successfully run the project? And then integration of sustainable principles. We'll discuss the principles in detail in the upcoming slide, as well as the environmental responsibility that we have towards the project. So let us discuss the principles for sustainable project. So there are basically 6 principles to make a project sustainable, which the first principle, that is the commitment and accountability. Accountability of all stakeholders, not just the team members of the client or the architect or other consultant, but everybody has to be accountable and responsible to deliver the project in the fullest form. It is not just one's objective to perform their own duties, but to understand, to give far more importance to a project and contribute in the delivery of the project. The second principle is basically decision making. We have project management managers or project management consultants who are, most of the times I've seen that they are more reactive kind of a decision making approach that they have. But we should have a team with a proactive decision making. So with the consultation of stakeholders, we should be able to envisage the future or what are the problems that are coming up. And based on these problems or the effective solutions need to be provided. The third most principle is integrated and transparency. That is, follow transparent process. I'll just give you an example. Like we were engaged. We are doing many kind of projects from building to infra. We were engaged by a hotelier in Bombay, and then we were introduced in middle of the project. Considering that we have to deliver the project, that is, we have to deliver 200 rooms with the 3 restaurants and 2 business center and that spa, etc., in the next 10 months. So the in a hotel project, the mock-up room is the most important aspect, because once the mock-up room is approved by the operator, then we have to just simply replicate this to the other rooms. So we were given a brief by the client, and we didn't ask for a written brief, but of course they gave us that you can take over and you have to schedule the project in such a manner that we have to complete it in the next 10 months. And the mock-up room has been approved. That is what the client told us. So when we started the project, we realized that there are so many issues with the project, in terms of decision making, in terms of contracts that are to be contractors that are to be appointed. There are certain design related queries, etc. But after 10 months, we came to know that the mock-up room was not approved. So basically, we had to start from the scratch, and then we had completed 70% of the rooms, and then we realized that there are certain changes which have been demanded by the client. So had there been a transparency, then we could have definitely, objectively perform in terms of aligning the goals of the project. The fourth principle is correct design principles, that need to be implemented during the design development stage, as there are the design of the building is much more important, like in terms of execution as well as after the project delivery. We'll come to the examples in the next slides. Of course, the environmental study and making the project economically viable. Most important aspect of a project is to make it economical viable. There are so many commercial buildings, there are so many residential buildings which are aesthetically good, but sometimes because of a lot of expenses, the return on investment is not achieved. So we'll move on to the next slide. Okay, how to achieve sustainability in project? In order to achieve sustainability, we have to develop a holistic approach, which is we as a project team members, be it the consultants, the contractors, or the vendors, should cope up with the project in such a manner that we should think beyond our scope, and we should actually concentrate. We should make the project as the center point to deliver. We should indulge into long-term planning in terms of overseeing the operational cost. Like, for example, if you are delivering a hotel, this industrial project, then we should understand that the capex, or the when the building cycle of the factory starts, when the operation in terms of manufacturing starts, we have to understand that the cost has to be reduced. So maybe by introducing solar or some kind of maintenance kind of principles in designing and execution will definitely help the project to be more sustainable during the cycle. The installation cost has to be considered. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, if you're building a multi-story building, then the tower crane has to be erected. The tower, either it can be a shaft mounted or it can be a side mounted tower crane. At the tower crane, there is a lot of cost and there is a lot of efforts when we talk about erection of these tower crane. If you have to ship the tower crane again at various stages of the project, then of course the installation cost will be higher, and it won't be feasible also to do so. So all these factors should be taken into account while planning for the project. Similarly, procurement cost. I'll give you some. We are procuring steel for a project, so we should always take it. We always take into account that how much is the requirement for the upcoming days or upcoming schedule, as well as how much we can accommodate in one particular trailer. So to control the logistics, we should design the procurement cost in such a manner that our project becomes much more viable. Mission-led approach is another aspect of sustainability. We should consider that we should have a clear mission of focusing on innovation or context in the process of the project, and it should be imbibed with the team members. Okay, so we'll discuss the simple practices that make projects sustainable. So as it says, sustainable future. For sustainable future, we have the power to adopt eco-friendly practices that minimize impact on the environment. So one such major point is designing with a sustainable vision. The designing has to start, be it architectural, structural, MEP, with waste reduction, use of renewable materials, optimal positioning of buildings, reducing the need for excessive cooling and heating. Like, I'll discuss few projects. Like, this is one project here in Canada, which is an office building, which claims that they have use of 70% less energy than other office buildings by the use of active and passive systems such as south-facing winter gardens. They have solar chimney, they have programmable lighting, and this is how they reduce the operational cost. This is another project called Sanko headquarters in Turkey. This is also a commercial building. It hosts offices, meeting rooms. It has a restaurant, auditorium. So the basic sustainable features that what they have provided is that they have actually the inside of the building is cooler by providing garden inside. There is a void also in the atrium, which allows natural lighting to illuminate the inside of the building. So this is how we can reduce the cost. Another example is about a built-it center. This is a commercial building in Washington, DC in USA. Here they say, they are claiming they have net zero energy, net zero water, net zero carbon, composting toilets, toxic free materials, enticing stairway, and 80% daylighting using high performance windows. And they say that 100% of the building energy comes from renewable sources. This is a project which most of us have seen if we have visited Singapore. It's Gardens by the Bay. Uh, the it's a beautiful place where you can see various species of plants and living flora. So what they have done is that these structures have incorporated PV panels, acting also as cooling channels to regulate the surrounding environment, and the skin, this building facade, the cladding system has vein-like cladding with thousands of species of living flora, which maintain the temperature and the environmental this thing about the project. This is another project in Italy. It's a residential building in which you can see the external facade is plant-based facade. So this reduces the sun rays, the impact of sun rays, and it also creates a welcoming humidity regulated internal microclimate. This is a project in Australia, in Melbourne. It's a pixel building. It has rooftop clad with both fixed and mobile PV panels, as well as vertical wind turbines. So that's how they can, reduce the operational cost. This is another project, very innovative. It's called Museum of Tomorrow. It is designed by architect Santiago Calatrava in Brazil. It has, see, you can see the water. There's a channeling water from this bay that regulates the temperature inside the building and supply the water for the museum surrounding, reflecting pools, as well as there are PV solar panels. You can see the star-like structure, which depends on the sun rays. So that star-like structure is also a good-looking aesthetic structure, but it also helps in the energy generation. This is a project here in Manchester, UK. It's a double skin facade, and it has an open atrium. It allows minimization of heating. It has natural heating, cooling, and lighting of the building. And it has, they claim that they have a large land parcel in this around the building, which develops these seeds, which from the they make oil from these seeds to develop their power source. So those were a few examples of designing. Similarly, we can use sustainable materials such as fly ash bricks. We have other materials such as slag from steel. We have so many other materials like silicate paints. We have solar cells. We have high performance glass. And many such materials can be used to make the building sustainable. We can also control the pollution by introducing large scale barricades, as well as we can reduce the noise pollution by using sound barriers. Now, this is a typical case that we have seen abroad. They have mostly in the countries, Western countries, they have double scaffolding system. And in the scaffolding, they have the net as well as they have a thick membrane kind of cloth, which ensures that the dust from the building does not escape outside, so making the environment more dust free. So we'll discuss the aspects of sustainability in project management. Basically, it is the mentalities and the perceptions that are most important. Then we discuss the design principles. There are contractual methods which we'll discuss in the further slides. So the structuring of the project has to be done in such a manner that it has to be sustainable. It has to complete as early as possible with achieving all the goals. We have concepts such as integrated project delivery, lean project management. So in this, we'll be discussing slightly about IPD. Apart from that, there are several parameters that define the health of the project, such as time, cost, quality, scope, risk, etc. So we'll discuss in brief traditional project management versus integrated project management in the next slide. So in traditional project management, we have a fragmented or hierarchical structure where we have the client and the PMC or the PM team, then there are architects, there are other consultants, there are vendors, and there are contractors. Whereas in IPD, the team is completely collaborative. It can be either one team or it can be integration of two, three teams in terms of JV or in terms of, the structuring is done in such a manner. The process is, of course, in traditional, it is much more linear, segregated, silo-oriented, whereas in IPD, we have more of a concurrent. So along the project, the decisions are taken along the life cycle of the project. We design and we collaborate to deliver. The risk in traditional project delivery is individually managed, whereas in IPD, it is collectively or it is shared and managed. The compensation for traditional project delivery is mainly individually focused, whereas IPD, it's on a performance or a value based. In traditional project delivery, we have simple 2D AutoCAD drawings or spreadsheets or some basic softwares. Whereas in IPD, we are continuously evolving. We can use BIM, we can have 4D, 3D. We have so many softwares where we can reduce the time required for quantity estimation, time required for collaborating with the teams, time required to make decisions. So in brief, we can say the process. When we talk about a traditional design build approach, first we design the program, then we do the designing, the detailed drawings, etc. And from there we do the build. So it is a linear movement or it is a linear process. And if there is a rework or redesign, we have to go back to the stages. So the overall turnaround time is much more. Whereas in IPD, we can see it's more of a collaborative approach where the designer, builder, all the other contractors, vendors, etc. They all work in harmony and they are working in a collaborative kind of an approach. So it can be done concurrently, all the decisions as well as. This is a typical organization structure of traditional project management where there is a client, there is a project management consultant, there are architects, consultants, and contractors. So basically, the architects, consultants, and contractors are being driven by the either project management consultant or the project management team of the client. In IPD, it is more of like if we have this concept of design plus build, where it is a popular concept, especially used by the government projects for a large budget project, infra projects, or maybe even building projects. We have this EPC kind of a contract where there is a prime contractor under whom they have their in-house team of engineering, architects, designers, subcontractors, their be it civil contractor, be it MEP contractor, be it facade contractor, everybody is in-house. So the prime responsibility remains with the main body, the EPC, to deliver. So there is another model in EPC that we have seen, that there is a client, there is a project management consultant or a quality manager or basically a third party who is monitoring the project. And there is a EPC contractor under whom there are various consultants or the subcontractors. So just to sum up IPD, basically IPD is a method which is designed to attack the weakest spot in construction industry, that is communication, which is the weakest link which has to be strengthened. All in IPD, we have the key individuals who unite together and they come with diverse experience, with different experience, and they all sit together to work towards one common vision for the project. There is more of a collaborative effort, and in the initial stages of the project, there is a lot of extra effort that is passed to do the designing, which of course reduces the rework or the changes in the future. IPD holds both the designers as well as the executors or the contractors accountable for the success of the project. So both have to work in tandem. This is a real life example. We did a factory where there is the requirement was basically the factory people, there's a PSU company, they were interested, they are more concerned, or they were more comfortable with the design process or the manufacturing process. So they didn't want to much coordinate with the external agencies and the contractors and the designers. So we took the role of end-to-end delivery, integrated delivery kind of a agency or a body. So we took up the role and we delivered in time so that the return on investment started as early as possible. And even during the COVID time, we we did not miss out anything. This is the pictures of the factory. This was in Gujarat. We had 1 month of lockdown, and the next month we started working. As what we did is that we passed on. We empowered the site team, so they were allowed to take certain decisions in collaboration on the virtual platform with the designers and the internal team. So that's how it worked. Had it been a traditional approach, then we would have had to go to some architect, or we had to go to the structural engineer, or we had to go to the MEP consultant if there were any changes or a kind of it's difficult situation. So second last point is tools for sustainable project management. So in PMC we have many MIS systems. Such as daily reports, we have weekly reports, we have monthly reports, we have software such as Primavera, we have Microsoft Project. So if we have to make it more sustainable, then we should allow all the project team members to go through the reports or go through the MIS parameters that are happening during the project's life cycle in order to decide, so that we can, like, for example, we'll just come to this formats. Now, in this format, we can see what is the health of the project in terms of planned versus actual. So there could be an issue of maybe labors. So we can take a decision of maybe aligning the contractor with some subcontractor, or maybe providing departmental labor, or if there is an issue of some material supply, then it can be directly supplied on. So such kind of decisions have to be taken at every aspect or every particular point of the project based on the parameters of the MIS. Now, this is a time meter which we had developed in 2016-17. I can see one such time meter where in Bandra there's a builder who has a digital board outside the project saying that so many days, so many hours, so many minutes are remaining for the delivery. So such kind of tools are not just to build up stress in the team, but also an inspiration, some kind of an motivation for the team to drive and complete the project. EVA analysis, as we all know, is the most important tool to decide the health of the project, because basically what is the cost incurred and what was planned is the biggest parameter for us to decide how the project is sustainable. These are a few other formats. This is a work front feasibility format, where what we have done, we have simply, this is a residential tower. So what we have done, we have simply identified the main parameters. So drawings, architectural, structural drawings, and municipal approval, and the work front availability. So these are the main 4 parameters which we have identified. And based on the availability or the status, we have developed this system where the red says not available, green says available, yellow says in progress, and the purple says completed. This is a bar chart which most of us do. We'll discuss the last a simple case study. This is a garden project that was given to us. This is in South Bombay, and this is about how you structure the project, the case study basically. So we had to revitalize the garden, and considering the existing flora and fauna and the spirit of the land to be maintained. Uh, the soil condition of this garden is poor, as because it was a dumping ground earlier. And there are trees which have uprooted the pathways and the adjoining areas where there people walk. There are the pathways are at a lower level. So when it rains during the monsoon, it floods, and then people cannot use the pathways. So we had to design a proper drainage system. So basically, this has been sponsored by the Tata Trust, and Mr. Ratan Tata had personally involved with our team members to give his inputs. So he especially had mentioned about minimum use of man-made materials. Yeah, of course, positive. There were our team as well as the architects. We all sit together with the people are staying around the park, with the NGOs, to decide on what is the requirement, or what best can be done so as to maintain the natural topography and the landscape and introduce as many possible, a lesser number of man-made elements. We also wanted, and we have not touched many of the trees. So, and also, of course, the maintenance has to be low because it is a public park. So there are many visitors from all walks of life. So we have to be very careful in terms of avoiding vandalism or avoiding any thefts, as well as it has to be sustainable in terms of maintenance, and it should look good throughout the life cycle. So basically, the strategy revolved around the scope and the budget. We had developed the procurement strategy earlier before the COVID, the project started, and that time the budget was around 15 crores. So you can see on the left-hand side, the pie chart shows the distribution of the cost based on the scope of work, where we can see that uh, every package has moreover, it's equally distributed, not much equally, but fairly distributed. Whereas when the COVID started, of course, during COVID, the funds were diverted and all for different initiatives. So the budget was brought down as they wanted to develop a corpus also of 5 to 6 crores for the maintenance of the park. So on the right hand side, we can see the simple pie diagram. The package distribution is not as like what it was earlier. So in this scope, you can see the dark blue and the light blue. The dark blue is a civil and finishing work, whereas the light blue is landscape work. So here we decided, we had designed to involve 3-4 agencies to cut down the cost. We were aiming to cut down around 15 to 20% by giving it to specialized contractors, the overall cost. And the cost, whatever would be the saving, can be used for the maintenance. Whereas in this format, in the latest format, we realized that based on the scope, it would be wise to go for one contractor, and maybe the landscape contractor or the landscape agency could be separate. That's how we can reduce the resources required in terms of the engineering, the supervision, and also the coordination, and deliver faster. So this is an example of how a sustainable project management can be taken up. So with this, I conclude.
Oh, you finished. Okay. Sorry for that.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Before I request Pandeyji to ask any questions, I would like to give my 1 minute that I'm very thankful to you, Varun, that you showed these wonderful architectural projects which have utilized all these principles and they have tried to do their bit. And that was very dazzling, especially for an architect like me, because now I look them up. And I think that's the motive of a webinar, which is to make people curious and make them want to know more. So in that way, I think your presentation was brilliant because it makes us want to know more about this field. Pandeyji, any questions you want to ask?
Thank you.
Actually, I have many questions. So, but I will start with first. You had mentioned about man-made material.
Okay.
That least use of man-made material.
Yes.
So can you give some example? What are those materials?
See, basically, like for example, I'll tell you, earlier I didn't give you the complete background. Earlier, there was a large gate. There were some elements in the park that were designed by the architects. There were certain things which were highlighting, or maybe even the pathway. The pathway was, it was a raised pathway with some paver blocks, which Mr. Tata didn't want. So he wanted it to be as far as possible, aligned with the nature. So we should not be able to differentiate. Like there is a too what do you call that? Too gaudy kind of a garden gate, or there is a.
I'm to say for being very specific to garden project, instead of paving, you can use just muram.
Yeah.
And
so
no paving.
That's how we.
Because even paving, even if you use kota or shava or whatever, it again becomes man-made because you query it, you give a shape, and then
so we had to take a lot of suggestion, and the biggest problem in this garden was the water accumulates. there is no drainage system. So we wanted to raise the pathways a little bit. So that was a issue.
Yeah. Now my second question is that we spoke about the project goals.
Yeah.
And in that all that process, the more emphasis was on achieving the project, achieving economy, something like that. Whereas in my opinion, I mean, it is just my opinion, the main project goal should be a minimum consumption of material with minimum energy, right? That should be project goal.
Of course, of course. Now, basically,
Because if we talk of sustainability, there are two parts of sustainability.
so that is
One is sustainability of the earth resources which we get from nature, and less use of non-sustainable material in the life of the building.
See, I'll tell you what, I would like to say this. See, when this topic was given, now, I was thinking whether we should focus on materials sustainability or should we focus on the project, because project has to be sustainable as well. See, what was in the mind is we have most of our projects, like we have commercial buildings, we have hotels, we have industrial structures. If the project is not sustainable, I'll give you an example. There is a hotel which we were part of. Aesthetically, it was beautiful. It was fabulous. It is like a mega structure. But unfortunately, what happens is that ultimately in a hotel, everything revolves around the cost. It depends on how much money is spent per room, and based on that, what is the return on investment? Because we have to understand that market dynamics changes every year. 5 years, may there is one hotel, another hotel. So this particular aspect also I wanted to take at the same time. Sustainable material. See, we can talk volumes about sustainable material, and there are experts also here who can add more value in terms of material replacement. Like in concrete, if you say there are so many initiatives being taken, there are so many experiments that have done and which have successfully performed. So basically, what I wanted to cover both the parts. So that is the reason why we discussed about the designing part, especially because to discuss the sustainability in terms of the life cycle of the building or a project, and to some extent sustainable materials and techniques, to know what is the health of the project. I hope you're aligned with what I want to say.
That's correct. Nowadays, there is a usually tendency of enclosing all commercial building, all the external perimeter is simply cladded by glass, and the glass is useful when you are allowing some rays to come in. So, but at the same time, there is a lot of cost of managing air. HVAC energy cost is too high because of that.
The cost is high, no? So if there is, suppose in Bombay, if we look at Bombay, we have all glass cladded structures. But to be honest, it is a tropical country. We are almost a tropical. We have heat island effect, and all this impacts the air conditioning. It impacts also the lighting. So, but in the Western, it is different. In the Western countries, they are struggling for light. They're struggling for heat. So,
Correct.
if it is aligned, then of course, initially it looks nice. It looks fantastic. There are so many examples. My own clients, that I don't want to name few. We do facade buildings. We do glass buildings. And when we talk about, there is a big science and there is a lot of work involved in terms of the maintenance of the building, the facade cleaning system. People don't want to invest. They say कि नहीं बारिश होएगा तो it will get clean, but that is not the scenario. We all know that it has to be maintained, and the person either through Spider-Man kind of a technique, or maybe a railway this thing, or you have so many techniques, or there is a what do you call, a boom that can go and we can have. So people should be, because there could be leakages, there could be maintenance issues, there could be aesthetical issues. So all these points also should be taken into consideration while designing itself. It has to be replaceable. We did a commercial building where it was necessary for us to introduce the substation in the basement. Now, in the basement, if we have to introduce, then we actually developed that time with City Lips was there. we had this car lift. We got the permission from that time. It was Reliance. It was not Adani. So we got the permission of keeping the substation in the second basement from Adani, Reliance, and we had to introduce a 6-ton car lift because there was a condition that the replacement or the transformer should be easily removed. So such kind of things are there. Or maybe like we did a vertical operation factory here in Bombay for Bisleri. So their condition was, it was vertical operation. So there was certain operations happening on one particular floor, certain operations happening on the other floor, certain operation in the basement. So one particular side of the building, the facade of that building was not done. It was designed in such a manner that it will integrate properly and it will not have uh, leakage issues also. So, there are so many things. There has to be a thought given to it. Now, IPD I discussed. Somebody will say everywhere IPD will not work. So it may work well in factory. It may work well like suppose if we have a good architect and we are all working together, but it may not work for a typical real estate project where they want an architect to design the building. Aesthetics are important. The planning is important. So it depends.
Yeah. Now last question.
Yeah.
What is your advice to construction engineers, site engineers to contribute for sustainability?
My advice is to be vigilant. My advice is to very simple. It is like we have to learn from our mistakes. We have to learn from what is happening. We have to discuss with as many people. I'm not saying we have to go out and discuss in the team itself, where we can discuss with the team members and we can. It's very important to have a proactive approach. I mean to look in terms of. Now it can be anything. It can be the materials as well as while constructing, we have to be very focused as well as, understanding the health of the project. We have to be very clear about what we want to do and what the project is going to take us. Because let's say I'll give you an example. There is a hotel. There is one project which we were doing, and that we had a schedule. Now my team members have gone through this now, where all our engineers, we learned that the resource allocation depends on the scope of work. Suppose we have aligned certain activities at particular junction of the project. If they are not completed at that time, then it will obviously pile up. And it will pile up in such a manner that the resources have to be increased, or the number of contractors or the number of laborers have to be increased, following the quality and the monitoring issues. So, basically, one has to be
at least they can concentrate on reduction of wastage.
Pandit, I think we have to have we have to have a
There
good
is a Priyaji to give Banti.
Okay. I'm going to give a Banti now.
I think we have met earlier.
A group discussion with Varun.
Yeah.
Right now, Varun, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for giving me this opportunity.
Subject is so vast.
True.
If he simply asks 2 questions,
yes,
it may not be fulfilling. We will meet independently and have a group discussion. We have a very valid point to discuss. I think here you can go ahead.
Okay. So thank you, Varun. Thank you, Pandeyji. As Jain sir said, this discussion can go on, but it was very interesting and it was a good overview of things that can be done. Varun, thank you very much for joining us and really appreciate all the presentation you've given us. Ladies and gentlemen, let's move on. Next, we have Engineer Sunny Surlekar. I'm very happy to introduce him. Sunny Surlekar is the technical head of Assess Build Chem Private Limited. He's a result-driven, of course, civil engineer and a concrete technologist. Various diverse areas of his expertise, to name a few: admixtures, construction chemicals, coatings, and specialty materials. Sunny possesses a strong background and experience in non-destructive testing of concrete, pile testing, asphalt mix designs, cement concrete mix designs, pavement designs, and evaluations. In addition to soil stabilization, waterproofing, repairs of concrete, and of course, their applications in heritage structures as well. His responsibility and expertise can be said to include managing product and material development, specifications and documentation, testing, and marketing. Sunny is also engaged in designing and conducting training programs for professionals as well as students. It's like giving back to the fraternity in the areas of construction materials, concrete, waterproofing, repairs, and specialty material solutions. So that's quite a lot. And today, ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready for a talk of a very different kind. He is going to be talking on green concrete and modern construction chemicals for energy efficient buildings. And I have very happily added with applications from dams to heritage structures. Sunny, over to you. And your time is 25 to 30 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for the wonderful introduction. So, actually, the thought process for this particular talk came by when we were thinking about buildings in general. So, I would say when we think about buildings, the largest surface area, of course, goes to the building envelope, as we call it. So, basically we started off thinking like, is there a way to make these better? So although we are talking about energy efficiency, although we are talking about durability, is my screen visible to you, the presentation?
Yes, at least to me it is.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
it's full
So,
screen now.
yeah, so that is what we started talking about. So, different kind of construction chemicals do play a very, very important role in trying to achieve this particular thing. So when we talk about sustainability, like of course these concepts are quite universal. They can be applied to other structures as well. But we thought that okay, let's start doing something from the point of view of facades and then take it up from there. So when we talk about facades, I mean, it is actually the area of the building that is fully exposed to the elements, right? Okay, it comes from the French word. It's as important as it is for the aesthetics of the building. It is also very, very important for the durability of the building on its own. So, which is why we oftentimes see that there are a lot of problems associated with facades. For example, oftentimes, like when we talk about the building facade, so it is the vertical sides of the building, the top of the building, and of course, since now we are going down into the ground, so even the ground, the below ground types of the sides of the building. So all these things have got problems with two things. One is the durability, and second is the energy efficiency. I mean, we all see very, very typical rains, leaks, things like that. And in most cases, our solution for all water problems are buckets. You can see buckets of different kinds, buckets in the previous slide as well. So I think that maybe the blue tarpaulin, a lot of these things are defects. And as a civil engineer, this is something that gets me riled up a lot. Like when I see our walls and when I see the walls leak like this, or when you see large scale leaking. Now this, for example, is in a building which is externally cladded with an ACP system, with a aluminum cladding system. And then you can really imagine thinking about the quality of construction and what kind of problems we have. So that is why we began to think about the facades, and we began to think about these about sustainable construction. So sustainable construction does not only mean that it is something green. So of course we are looking to reduce the environmental impact of the structure as a whole, but also we want to reduce the financial impact of the structure. So financial impact means, say, maybe the cost that you put into making the building, and the cost that you put in maintaining the building, and the cost that you put in running the building over time. So that is how we started thinking about sustainability, as an out of the box concept or as a different concept. So the first thing that we thought about is, as a step one, how do we increase the durability of the facade? So one is that we can, like when we talk about concrete facades, we can look at improving the facade concrete itself. That was one part of it. We can talk about, doing a kind of protective system, like something like maybe a hydrophobic render. A lot of these buildings are plastered. So using something like hydrophobic renders might be one part of it, or protecting your entire facade system with the right type of coatings. That is another part of it. Now, when your facades are made of steel and glass, like a lot of the new generation building, and as Pandey sir was saying initially, uh, this is the kind of a new system that is come into place, which may or may not. I mean, there are a lot of differing views on this, but it may or may not be very, very suitable for India. Like in India is a hot country, so oftentimes we also have a lot of the glass house effect. So the cost of it looks easier to build, it looks easier to maintain, but in certain cases it may not work out well in terms of energy efficiency. But even in that case, there are today solutions available in terms of sealants and profiles and different kind of protective cladding systems, which can make the durability of those type of facades also very long term. It can really make them last a long time. When we talk about masonry or historical structures, a lot of different ideas are available to make the structure more durable, and these include new generation or new type of hydrophobic renders. There are a lot of new generation lime based protective renders available. So even if the structures are old, we no longer need to go into cement to kind of replace them. We do have modern formulated lime based systems for older buildings, and of course protective coatings and sealers are there. When we talk about the natural stones, of course, a lot of hydrophobic materials are also available to increase the durability. So coming to talking about concrete facades, since most of the new buildings that we construct are built in concrete, we thought of a new idea altogether. So we said, okay, when we talk about sustainable construction, or sometimes also when we talk about mass housing or things like that, it's like somewhere we get lost in the thought process, like what we want to achieve. So we actually start off from cost and then go to see what we can achieve with that, rather than first trying to see what we can achieve and then how do we optimize the cost. So anyways, once we're thinking about this particular type of an example, like what we can do with a building like this, we actually came up with a system to work with a very, very good quality formwork. We thought about working with environmentally friendly or green concrete, and in addition, as a waterproofing and durability enhancement, as well as energy efficiency layer using a thermal coating. So what we did was, rather than going for conventional formwork, like we kind of took this concept and applied it to mass housing. So when we thought about the conventional formwork and how much it costs and how much time it would take, the cost of repeatability, we suddenly discovered that having an aluminum formwork, I think most times they're also commonly referred to as Maiwan. So we thought, why not take this kind of a formwork into consideration? Because one is that it's very, very fast. Two is that it eliminates block work. So that means the problems associated with masonry and the masonry concrete joints and things like that, all those problems go away. Since you can control the concrete better, you can get a better durability and water tightness out of it. Of course, these form walls are much thinner, so lesser loads on the building. So the building can be designed a lot more economically. We can treat joints much more easier as opposed to the conventional masonry. And of course, this kind of things, because of the repeatability, is very, very easy to handle. The second part we looked at was green concrete. So the green concrete, like we again looked at it in two particular ways. One is what would happen if we design it as a normal concrete, and the second was what if we designed it as a self-compacting concrete or as an SCC. But what we were targeting with in the mix was a very, very high replacement of OPC with GGBFS, with slag, ground granulated blast furnace slag. So what we kind of came across is that this kind of a mix had much, much better durability and water tightness as opposed to conventional mixes. We could design this kind of a mix, like despite the low OPC contents, we could design it for very, very good strengths. I wouldn't say very high strengths, but very good strengths. I'll show you some results. And of course, the whole thing led to it a large scale reduction in the carbon footprint. Okay. And because of that, automatically, the overall construction became very, very sustainable. The last but not least, because of the very, very high amount of OPC substitution, this kind of concrete became much cheaper than conventional concrete. So I'll show you the numbers. The third part of the system we took into account was using a thermal barrier coating. So these are a very, very new generation of materials, which are, they look like paint, they feel like paint, but they're very, very high performance coatings. That means they have a very, very low specific gravity. They're very fluffy. and they're based on ceramics. So these materials, they kind of, you have to process them like paints, but overall they actually behave like insulation. So it gives you very, very good results, like over 20 to 30% reduction in temperatures. And overall, because of the temperature reduction, automatically your cost of cooling and all goes down. So again, electricity savings is very, very nice. And at the same time, this type of a system is very, very waterproof and breathable. So that means the long-term protection in general. So the core idea was to combine durability, okay, reduce the entire carbon dioxide footprint, CO2, save cost, of course, because we could kind of design these mixes to become very cheap in cost. And over the life of the structure, because we're using a thermal coating, it kind of helps to save the energy in the building in the long run. So that leads to a lot of savings over life of the structure. So as a concept, we started this concept with like trying to batch this kind of material at site. So we had a nice pan mixer at site. The initial types that we did all had a low concrete grade, so only about 35 mpm. We substituted more than 50%, like close to 50 to 55% of the OPC with slag. We had a good workability time, so the admixtures were designed especially to give a particular kind of performance. And this then led to the next project where we thought, like, could we do SCC at site? So the answer to all of that was yes. Because what happened, like even in the first step when we started the first building, we saw that in most cases the workability of the concrete mixes on its own was, I would say, much better than the conventional concrete. Conventional concrete made with crushed sand, made with I would say more than that, crusher fines. It was simply not very workable, and they had to use very large amounts of water, which in turn it affected durability, and even had a lot of problems with admixtures. So we sort of worked on that admixture gradation a little bit and incorporated it into a new mix. When we took a look at the compressive strength, the 100% OPC mixes and the ones with almost half the amount of OPC and the balance GGBFS had almost the same compressive strength. They're very, very comparable. The water permeability results again were a little bit better, slightly better than the compressive mixes. Where it really won was the RCPT test, as opposed to a medium value that we got for conventional concrete. With the GGBFS concrete, it came down to low. And the cost per cubic meter, that was where we were truly astounded, because we saw a savings of almost 450 rupees per cubic meter of concrete with the new mix design. So that is where it also, sort of the builder suddenly began thinking about it, that yes, could we make a structure that is much more durable, but at the same time, does it cost much less? So the answer was yes. And we applied this concept to a few buildings. Like these were a few buildings which are done at Virar, where we did this. One was like concrete for an industrial park kind of a building. One was a residential building, and I think one was a school building where the entire RCC frame was built with this particular type of concrete. So the practical factor side, we said, okay, that's not enough that we simply do all these things in the lab. We also took a look at what kind of results we're actually seeing on the site. So what we saw was more than 50% of cement was saved. The compressive strength that we got from cores was consistently over 40 when the requirement was about 35. And over the course of the project, the main thing, the carbon dioxide footprint reduced was more than 3,000 metric tons. Okay, and the cost, of course, we had very good cost savings with that particular type of a mix. So when we went to the next building, to the next structure that we tried to do, we said, okay, let's try doing this entire concept with an self-compacting concrete as well. So we put together a self-compacting concrete. We made a very special admixture for that to get the workability. And we customized that admixture for different things like water reduction, of course. But this kind of a mix, the problem in Virar is the availability of sand. So what you get is what the local guys, they give you. And this kind of a sand, sometimes it is very rich in fines. At the other times, it's very deficient in fines. So we had to kind of design an admixture which could slightly maintain the cohesion, at the same time maintain slump, reduce stickiness, because this kind of a sand really had the tendency to just clump the entire concrete mix together. Then, of course, this particular system, because of the very high replacement of cement with GGBFS, it still had to gain strength relatively rapidly so that the formwork could be removed. And last but not least, we had to take a look at the overall flow. It took us a few tries, but finally the results came through very nicely. So this is 100% sand that we get from the local sources, made with the aggregates up to 10 mm, and very nice SEC we could make finally in the lab. So also this whole thing worked out pretty well overall in terms of the result. I mean, we got wonderful T500 times, workability easily over 60-65 minutes. We could easily hit compressive strengths of about 56 here. You can see, so more than 55 newtons on an average. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the 56-day strength came out to close to about 60 to 65 MPa. So we could also design the structure overall for a little bit higher loads. But here, the main kicker comes in here. Like, despite using very high grade of PCE admixtures, despite using a very special VMA, which again is a very expensive type of an admixture, we could still overall get like a cost saving of almost about 230 rupees a cubic meter as compared to the conventional concrete that was being made at the mix. So this is what made it very interesting for use interesting for use in the building. So, okay, so that was one part of it. So this is like one of the ideas which we thought, it was a little bit out of the box thinking in designing the material itself. And that material would play a pivotal role in ensuring the durability of the building, as well as the reducing the carbon dioxide footprint. So some of the other, for example, if you already have an older building and you want to protect it in the long run, so what you can do is also use this new generation of things like hydrophobic mortars. So normally it's like this kind of a material is often used in water tanks. So the material is hydrophobic on its own. It has also got a resistant to water pressure. So it's resistant to almost 5 bars or 50-meter head of water pressure. But it is again a very interesting material that can be used on the facades to increase their durability. That apart, the next thing we can think about increasing durability of facades is using anti-carbonation or waterproof coatings. Now, the best part about these coatings is that they have a lot of these properties put together. So they are chloride and carbonation resistant. They're open to water vapor diffusion. That means they are breathable, as we call it. Of course, by default, they're waterproof. They're resistant to water ingress. They're very good with crack bridging and also resistant to UV and weathering. So, it's pretty much, again, this is a type of material that looks and feels like paint. So when you're processing it or when you're applying it, it feels like paint. But the protective quotient or the life of this coating is definitely much higher. On an average, in a place like Goa, like we are seeing some of our oldest projects that we had executed, almost run up to, say, somewhere in the vicinity of almost about 13 to 15 years. So a long-term, very long-term protection you can get out of this kind of things. We are, of course, also doing heritage structures, kind of protecting heritage structure with this particular material because it's very breathable. But as well as we are applying it to traditional buildings, factories, and all different types of structures, as you can see. Another area which we normally don't do, like architectural concrete, for example, I see a lot of good structures being made, but oftentimes they're not protected. For example, like even architectural concrete, like what we see in the Lotus Temple, it can simply be protected with the right type of sealers, the hydrophobic sealers based on silane, siloxane, silicones, that family of materials. So all these kind of materials are today available. So what I'm doing or trying to do is pretty much give you an idea that how you can use materials to overall increase the durability, and through durability over time, the sustainability of different types of building facades. The next thing we need to look at is increasing the thermal or the energy efficiency of the buildings. So oftentimes, like when we talk about traditional buildings, they often use things like different insulation systems to keep cool. For old masonry buildings, as well as some of the newer kind of masonry or masonry and RCC type of buildings, you can use this new generation of systems called EIFS. For all the roofs, you have to take a look at the cool roof kind of systems. And of course, I'm not really covering steel and glass buildings because, again, most of the things related to getting energy efficiency for those buildings is based primarily on the fenestration or the type of glass that they use. So again, that is a whole different line in itself. So I will be covering more for more things on the traditional buildings. So one thing that also all you new generation engineers can use is something called as these ECBC codes. That means these are the Energy Conservation Building Code, and it was launched in about 2007. But basically, this entire thing is a set of guidelines on how to make buildings more energy efficient. Doesn't matter whether your building is new or whether your building is old. So it gives you guidelines on what type of windows and fenestrations to use, what type of glass to use, maybe what type of power supply, and the internal systems that you do for power distribution, what those materials you can use, and what you can use for facades, because facades is something that really dictates how energy efficient your building is. So it will provide the design norms for your building envelope, as well as for your lighting system, HVAC, that is your air conditioning, electrical, as well as your heating, water heating and pumping systems. So with all these things, like especially we as engineers or we as the builders, we will mostly be looking at this thing, like, what can we do to the building envelope? How can we improve the thermal performance so that the building stays cooler and uses less energy? So where can we as a CC industry, where can we provide value? The first thing that we can provide is EIFS. So EIFS is a system that was developed in Europe. So it's basically external insulation facade systems. So that is one part or one solution. I'll just show you what all these things mean. The second one is the cool roofs. So that means this talk only about built-up roofs, the special systems for roof, whereby you can reduce the amount of heat coming in through your roof through different materials. And the third one is something that is that is the latest technology, that is the thermal barrier coating. It's the same type of coating that I talked to you earlier on in the presentation. So the EIFS basically came by for for these kind of masonry buildings, because in Europe and places like Europe and the European and the American countries, where it's cold and there is no real way to retrofit these kind of buildings, so they started building a system called EIFS. So EIFS, what it simply does is that you have your existing wall and you attach actually an EPS board, a thermal insulation EPS board to this facade using a kind of adhesive, using kind of cementitious adhesive, and this adhesive is basically provided by the CC industry. So we provide the adhesive, we provide the boards, and then the finishing systems for this. So the finishing systems can be either simply plaster with some mesh inside it, or it can be a plaster and a coating, something to make it look good, or different types of decorative or protective paints, or different waterproofing system. So it's a very interesting thing, especially in areas or buildings which you can't retrofit. So you can pretty much mimic the old looking buildings with a newer system which will provide you much better energy insulation. The next part is like when we talk about insulation. So we need to insulate our rooftops. Okay, so wherever there is a flat slab, or wherever there is a top slab of the building, that is where a lot of the heat comes in. So there also a similar kind of system is used. So you have your concrete, you'll have your waterproofing system over it. You put in the EPS or the XPS boards on top of it. That is what provides the insulation. And then to protect this entire assembly, you need to do a proper waterproofing on the system. So sometimes they are simply left with a reflective roof coating. At the other times, they can also have a green vegetation on top. So this insulated or green roofs is something that's coming up very, very strongly. And I think it would be something for the future. Cool roofs are something that are made India has been practicing it for actually generations now. It is not something very new. Like even in the old structures, if you see the old heritage structures or masonry structures, they simply used to whitewash the roof. And with this whitewash, it simply has got a reflectance. That means it reflects the sunlight. And because of that, the living area basically stays cool. So we all know there are a lot of benefits to having a cool roof. But at the same time, we are now upgrading it with a new generation kind of coating or new generation kind of thermal barrier coating systems. So what this kind of a coating is looking to do is basically maintain a comfortable environment, and reduce the energy cost. At the same time, because this kind of coatings are based on modern resins. Okay, modern resins might be, there might be like a sometimes like an acrylic and a PU sort of blend, but mostly it is mostly these kind of coatings are based on different types of acrylics. So because of the acrylic part of it, these coatings remain very, very breathable. So you can even use them on older buildings. So if there is entrapped moisture, like in Indian homes, all this entrapped moisture is free to escape, through the particular coating. At the same time, it does not allow the heat to come back inside. So what kind of benefits this particular coating can give is, one, it can help save energy. It can help save help save money, and sorry sorry, and at the same time it can help save a lot of time, because it's much easier, right? Like rather than doing the 7 step or 6 7 layers of waterproofing and a cool roof, you can simply go ahead with one simple coating, and it kind of gives you the same effect. So in simple terms, what this particular thing does is, as opposed to say a traditional roof or traditional coating on the facade of the building, say maybe where your internal temperatures reach somewhere about 31 to 40 45 degrees, in this case, using a thermal barrier coating, you can bring this down to much more comfortable 21 to 26 degrees without cooling, right? So I mean, things like this, it really helps. So basically this works on all three methods. Like it actually reflects part of the heat, but it also emits, like a little bit of heat that is absorbed is over time emitted by the ceramic. So all this is because of the magic of ceramic along with the acrylic binder. So it really leads to a lot less of your heat actually entering your living space. At the same time, of course, this kind of a system is weatherproof. So sun is no problem, rains are no problem. But at the same time, it will provide any and all buildings with a high level of energy efficiency. Like I said, again, the magic is in the ceramic, and these kind of coatings are really coming up into use. So just
Sunny, 3 minutes to go.
yeah, I'll be done. Just last few things. So even if you see, like, this is basically what we called as a tawa test. So that means we are coating one side of the tawa with this thermal barrier coating, and even at that high temperatures, you can see, whereas the coated surface comes up to a temperature of almost 90 to 95 degrees, the uncoated part of it will be almost at a, say, about 190 degrees. So you can imagine the kind of insulative properties that this coating has. So it's a very light and fluffy coating, like most cool coatings in the market are simply like normal paints. This is actually a coating which has got a specific gravity below 1. That means it's a very light, fluffy kind of coating, and it depends on, and since it's based on ceramic, it's very, very light. And because of this, this is what separates it from the cool coatings over time. Like cool coatings, when they get dirty, for example, like when you use the white coatings or white lime washes, when they get dirty, the heat resistance keeps on going down over time. This kind of a coating, a thermal barrier coating with ceramics, even if it gets dirty, the effect doesn't go down a lot because it has got the insulation from the ceramic. So of course, this kind of a material, it's got a lot of features: good weatherability, good waterproof properties. It's chloride and carbonation resistant, so it also works like the anti-carbonation coating I showed you earlier. It's been tested also extensively in India. So a lot of tests also by CEPT and all. They've done a lot of research into it. In most cases, very, very easy to apply simply by spray. Okay, so it's one of the new generation technologies which is working like that. So very simple to use material. Like I said, looks and feels like paint, but behaves something entirely different. And when we talk about applying this again to a low cost housing project, we saw that the kind of energy gains it gave, or the cooling bills it saved, or the electricity bills it saved, was over 30%. Now imagine that in your overall life of the building. So very, very efficient for mass housing as well. So in conclusion, yeah, we thought of these outer box kind of ideas application to mass housing, where we can take a look at the facades, make them more durable, and make them more energy efficient. So over time, of course, energy-wise, we saw that it was saving a lot of money, but also using all these different systems, like maybe using an SCC, using a high using a proper aluminum formwork as well as the thermal barrier coating. Each individual component is one of the most expensive technologies in its line. Okay, so formworks, aluminum formworks are expensive. The SCC is generally thought to be expensive, and the thermal barrier coating again is much more expensive than paint. But when we kind of combined all these three things put together on a mass housing project, we could easily make out like it was saving somewhere close to about 150 to 200 rupees a square feet in construction cost, overall construction cost. So again, a lot of economy actually came out of it, even when we thought we are actually spending a lot of money upfront in terms of capital. Of course, the best part is reduce carbon footprint, use local materials, and create true value for the low cost housing. So with that, I would say thank you very much for your patient listening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sunny. I just thought I'll get up and rub my fingers and hands because I'll tell you why. We started with Tanvi Auti on management and her journey into the business part, the tech part. Then we went to Varun Raje, who explained what is project management. Then Sunny told us about these chemicals and how it can help in a greener planet. So I'm just thanking all of us because of the name that we gave, which is out of the box. What else could be out of the box and thinking really different from what conventional wisdom goes? And I think conventional, the meaning of conventional itself is set to change after this webinar. Friends, coming up next, of course, I would like to ask Pandeyji if we have time for questions. Otherwise, I'm going to go to this box to find out who's next.
We can have questions later.
I may have time for questions.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
the session doesn't have that
And
time.
we are very careful about time, and therefore,
Yeah.
Jen
He
sir,
has
should we
given a
move
very
on?
good he has given very good brief about material, so I don't think there is
Yes.
any need to ask questions. So
Okay.
self-expressive.
Okay. So, friends,
Thank
let's
you.
move on. Sunny, thank you very much. One part of your presentation I love was the animation. So something just coming, popping up, and one has to knock yourself that yes, you are in a Zoom meeting and you're not actually sitting with all of you. It really seems as if you are talking on stage and we are all listening. And this applies to all the three presentations that we had so far. So coming up with our next guest, thank you, Sunny. Thanks a lot. I'm going to look to my box and see who's next. And coming up next from this box is engineer Satish Jain, who is MD UHPC India. That's of course ultra high performance concrete. To give you a short introduction, engineer Satish Jain has more than 20 years in structural design, 10 of them in USA. His educational qualifications include MS, then he did a PhD in civil engineering, of course structural, from Iowa State University, America. He's an alumnus of NIT Calicut, which I believe used to be called REC. He's done his BTech with honors, a good student, obviously. His PhD work was in the field of structural applications using UHPC, that's ultra high performance concrete. He's a licensed structural engineer in both USA and India and has been involved with designing challenging structures across both the countries. I could say safely that that's quite rare. Dr. Jain's current initiative involves promoting the use of UHPC in India through material manufacturing, research, of course, material and application development, training, engineering, and product management services. He is currently Managing Director, UHPC India Private Limited, Mumbai, and has been the author of various technical papers and presentations made at several forums and, of course, associated with several prestigious bodies and organizations. Let us all welcome Engineer Satish Jain, who today will talk on UHPC, ultra high performance concrete, and its applications. This is what I have added: applications in bungalows, clubhouses, museums, eco villages, and fantastic structures. Satish sir, over to you.
Oh, thank you so much for the very nice introduction, Priyaji. Very nice to be here, and kind of a very difficult day. Uh, should have been here at 3:15, and I joined later. Just got stuck in so many things, but great to get started here. So what we'll do is I know I have some 25 plus 5 minutes time over here. We're going to overview on the material and properties and all those kind of things. So meanwhile, I'll start sharing my screen and share my screen and straight away go to the presentation over here. Right. I hope it's visible out there. Jen sir?
Yes.
Okay,
Please go ahead.
great. So straight off, what we'll do is we'll jump on to this. So last couple of talks that I've been hearing have been mainly dedicated, to sustainability and how we can do it. And you'll realize, although I'm speaking about a material over here, a very new material to the country, but it really bind itself, to the sustainability point of view and quite automatic, so as to speak. So we'll talk about this material. And if I go back a couple of slides over here, right at the top, I've written ultra high performance composite, right? I've just not written concrete. So it's a very advanced form of concrete, literally. And therefore the word composite, because it's a fibrous material, so as to speak. But let's look at this title over here. What if this composite can behave like steel? And I'll show you these left two over here where we have structural steel and we have this UHPC. This is a slide from Ductal, which is a product out of Europe. And you see how close a structural steel member is in terms of size to a UHPC member, or vice versa, right? So, and in terms of weight, we're just talking this UHPC member being 25% higher about than the structural steel member. Look at the comparison when it comes to pre-stressed concrete and reinforced concrete. Now these are weights in terms of pounds per linear foot, but you can imagine how heavier the concrete or the pre-stressed concrete members are in relation to what UHPC can provide. Automatically the word sustainability, etc., can come to mind, right? Because now we are saving a whole lot of raw materials, coming up with something very compact. It behaves quite a bit like concrete, but in fact behaves quite a bit like structural steel also, and we'll look at that. Now, is this a new wonder material that has come up? A lot of times, people ask me that question. Well, last couple of years, there's a lot of buzz in India about UHPC. But it was 1967 when Mr. Hans Bach out of Denmark, I believe, he came up, or in fact, he was the original inventor of UHPC. So we're talking more than 40 years back, right? So that's where he started developing, and that's how UHPC actually finally came up in Europe. So it's over a 40-year-old material, and with tons of data, tons of research, tons of background. It's just that we as a country, we are the last major country, I would say, in the world to really adopt this material, right? So it is fresh for India, and there were a lot of questions about it, and whether you have this technical data, whether it is acceptable, whether it would really work. So let's look at that here in the next few minutes. And I'm going to go through these slides pretty quick from now on, just to give you an idea what UHPC can do in comparison to steel beam, right? So I'm not going to compare to cost of concrete as such at all, but we'll compare it to structural steel. And look at this number down below. If you have members, multiple members on a structure, you can be 20% more economical as compared to structural steel, especially when you're looking at composite beam, steel composite beam sections, etc. That's going to be a game changer in the industry. And I'm not saying that, it's a well established rule of thumb. I'll give you some more comparisons in, to concrete. If you look at this right over here, this is a RC girder, 15-meter long, and there's a bridge girder, right, with special purpose vehicle loading. And look at a UHPC girder, which is pre-stress. It's 72% lighter, 72% lighter. And depth, you can see the change in depth too, 1400 to 650. This is a PSC girder on the left side, 30 meters, and a PSC girder in UHPC. It's about 60% lighter. Again, the depth, 2000 millimeters to 1250 millimeters, big change. When I say this, you can imagine about the constructability also, right? The constructability becomes easier, erection becomes easier, the launching becomes easier. A lot of things. Now, this is a 30-meter span PSC girder versus a 42-meter span UHPC girder, almost similar in depth, but still about 20% lighter. Now that's a major difference, and I can keep going on. I have a couple of more. You can still go longer spans, but the weight starts increasing over here, right? So a couple of more, but I'm not going to talk about those. And this, what I'm showing, is about a 200. In fact, it's a 220-meter tall commercial building that's going to come up in Mumbai very soon, which will utilize UHPC in a variety of ways in terms of joints or stitching of precast members, in terms of UHPC columns, in terms of UHPC girders, right? And also a 120 grade, concrete material, which is more of a lighter UHPC than the conventional UHPC, which gives more than 150 MPa in strength. So things are going to change. The first UHPC project in the country came up in February 2021, and you can see these girders look more like eye girders, right? These are eye girders in shape. That's why they can compete with structural steel. As I just mentioned some time ago, it's a material and fills in a very critical gap between concrete and steel. And so we are not here to replace concrete. UHPC is not here to replace structural steel. Maybe it will a little bit, but then it can work as a composite with concrete and a composite with structural steel. And engineers can go ahead and design new kind of structures right now. So if the question comes, are there codes for it? Well, let me just put it in a very simple way. Right now, all the bridges in the country, the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways has allowed for the French design code to be used for design for UHPC. But in the same breath, I'll say that the IRC, I am part of the IRC, and we are working on the standards and the guidelines for UHPC design for the bridge industry. So that should come soon, right? There should be a draft, hopefully, which should be ready by December for circulation purpose. So it will be there in the code soon. But as far as application and usability, I think with a good peer review of any good institution, things are already moving ahead in the country. It's more of a powder material, no aggregates, but a huge volume of steel fibers, right? So huge volume of steel fiber, what happens? You start getting ductility. Concrete is non-ductile, it's a brittle material, but UHPC composites are in fact ductile in nature. So you now start getting different benefits. And down below you will see that it's a nicely flowable material. It acts like an SCC. You don't have any coarse aggregates, and it can fill in any kind of shape or size that you want. Very quick, I'm just going to show you this because we don't have, it's a very short presentation. Typically I can take about an hour to 2 hours for this presentation, but you see how it just spreads around. This is a flow test right here. Moving ahead, for everybody interested in the technical data over here, right at the top you see how you get strain hardening with UHPC, and all the way to 0.006 strain before it starts strain softening, right? Compare it with normal concrete, you can get up to 5 to 6 MPa, but you have a brittle failure. So the area under the curve is called the toughness, and you are getting over 100 times much tougher material as compared to concrete right over here, right? Compressive strength, like I said, it's typically over 150A. You will get it in the range of 120 to 250 MPa also. Elastic modulus, typically 50 GPa or 50,000 MPa, but there are UHPCs which will give you about 70,000 MPa as well, and a very low creep. So when I say a very low creep, you're talking about, 1 with normal curing and almost like 0.2 with steam curing, right? Extremely low. Now, all this is a very, very good masala for long span construction, right? Because compressive strength is good, you can put more pre-stressing. Elastic modulus is high, that helps with deflection. Creep is low, it helps with long-term, low deflection in the long-term range. Also, in terms of the ultimate design, you see your, if you take a section above your neutral axis, you don't have a parabolic curve anymore. You typically get a triangular curve now. And below your neutral axis, where you don't have any help from concrete, now you have help from UHPC. So this is the tensile part that you get out of UHPC, and this rectangular part literally comes from the strain hardening, from the top curve that you see. So spend time on that. But the other great aspect, life cycle cost, in terms of life cycle, in terms of sustainability or green construction, you may say that this material is extremely durable because of its tight particle packing, and you can get 100-year maintenance free life out of it. That means that once done, you're not spending any more money on the life cycle. Here is a comparison. Yellow is all concrete in terms of durability performance. Green is all high performance concrete. And if you can still see some blue, that's down below over here. No oxygen permeability, hardly anything. Carbonation depth is lower. Other permeabilities, chloride ion penetration depth, etc., all lower. RCPT values are typically lower than 250 coulombs, anywhere in the range of 50, 100, 150, something like that, but typically lower than 250 coulombs. Any day, this material is much, much, much durable than both concrete and steel, I would say. These are typical problems of Mumbai. I'm just showing you with different kind of fixes that happen in our country, typical girders. Bottom line, you need a lot of funds to maintain your bridges. And I'm not going to go through that number, but I really want to emphasize the same thing I spoke about durability. It's a one-time solution. You put UHPC, it's a one-time solution, right? You don't have to come in and redo your structures every 10, 15 years, in terms of heavy maintenance or something like that. Saves a lot of money elsewhere too. Giving you examples, I'll give you a lot of examples so that you can really see that things are happening around the world. This is a bridge in France, southern France. Even the columns and the girders, both are UHPC. And pretty thin, so as to speak. You can look over here. The girder just is an inverted T, pre-tension member, and the columns just are post-tensioned and connected with a rocker bearing at the bottom. Very thin. Yeah, this is a bridge in Iowa, which is a pie-shaped girder, right? So they're pie shapes put next to each other. They're all UHPC, and they're also connected to each other with UHPC. And I'll come to very quickly why they can be stitched or connected to each other with UHPC, because there's a property of bond I'll speak about. Waffle decks. So these are waffle decks. This is a bridge, and you can see with a very thin waffle deck, 65 mm thick slab, 200 mm deep rib, and you can still do a deck out of it and still connect it to each other with UHPC or stitched with each other with UHPC. Why I am showing this? See, there's a new generation of expansion joints which is coming up using UHPC. I already saw them physically in June in the US. Just looks like this middle thing, wherein you actually do not have a joint above, because UHPC can now rotate. It has this rotational capacity due to the tensile capacity. So what you're doing is you're pushing the translation down at the bearing, and you're pushing the rotation from the bearing all the way to the top at the UHPC. And fantastic, you don't get any bumps driving down the highway. So joints, now there's something missing over here, but typically your development length with rebar in normal concrete, for rebar in normal concrete, is about 40 to 50 times the diameter. With UHPC, you just need 1.5, less than 1.5 times the diameter, 15 times the diameter. Therefore, UHPC stitches are pretty lean. You can see that over here, extremely lean. So if you have, concrete slabs and all, you can just stitch them together with UHPC, right? You can do that pretty easily. And these joints are very robust and highly impermeable. So they work in the long term much, much better than any other joint solution. Same thing with girders. You can do these joints with girders. Rapid strength development. I already spoke about a few things, right? Excellent strength and all. These are some piles. Canada and US are doing piles which are exactly the same weight as steel edge piles. Same weight. This last row here shows pounds per foot. 61 versus 57, almost the same, UHPC and steel. And you can see this middle pile in this photograph is a UHPC pile. So the way things are changing in the world, and India is going to adopt UHPC in a variety of ways in the nearing terms. Another way, over the bridge decks, UHPC is put as a small layer, about 30, 35 mm, maybe up to 40 mm, right? And it safeguards your concrete members below because it's highly impermeable. Number two, you don't need a wearing course. So lifelong, you can do without a wearing course because the abrasion resistance is also extremely high. If I didn't say about impact, but the impact resistance, in fact, is also very, very high. And then here, on the right hand side, of course, there's some strengthening work that can also be done with UHPC. So repair and strengthening is a very big thing with UHPC. That's Switzerland, where they did a long repair and rehabilitation with UHPC. In fact, I just saw a complete viaduct repair back in the US in June near Philadelphia, 30 kilometers or 30 miles from Philadelphia. This is another repair in New York, or not repair, this is an overlay. In fact, this is an overlay of UHPC on a very, very small bridge. You can see that. All site work. Industrial repairs, industrial slab repairs with UHPC to take very heavy loads. There's bridge repair with UHPC. I'll show you some more repair things. There's because of lack of time on this. I'm just taking you through that there are a variety of ways repair can be done. Marine jacketing, pile jacketing that can be done using tremie. That's possible. And this is Canada railway pier that has been repaired with UHPC. Not going to go into this. Also, steel girders that have been retrofitted with UHPC. So these kind of things have been done. I don't know if that one slide is coming or not, but if I forget, let me tell you, a UHPC girder hardly requires any shear reinforcement. Typically 90%, 95% of the time you do not require shear rebar because UHPC has an extremely high shear resistance. And therefore you can actually build girders without any shear. Coming back to this slide, see if this is a concrete U girder and there was consolidation problem, you put UHPC in there, in a day or so you get about 50 MPa strength and it's ready to go for erection. So that's a good way of repairing. Seismic strengthening, this is also Canada, where you do more pedestrian bridges if you want to see those, around the world. I'll keep going quick. Already spoke about this. Design shear strength of UHPC without rebar. Okay, design shear strength 10 MPa, extremely high. Rest I've spoken about, 15 diameter bond, accelerated strength gain. You can have UHPCs that give you 60, 70, 80 MPa in a single day as well, right? So you can move forward. some work that was done over here for lapping, where lap length wasn't sufficient, where UHPC was put for 600 length, and then moving forward with concrete. I want to show you some other international projects also. That's a railway station in France, southern France. The entire roof or the terrace was with UHPC. The columns were in structural steel on this one. But I also want to show you, that's just the form work. I also want to show you this project where all the columns were in UHPC and the roof was in structural steel. So you can do a lot of, permutation combinations in the way that you can apply UHPC to your projects. Nice, interior work, staircases, balconies, these kind of little things. Even facade work in UHPC, that's starting to catch up. Actually, Middle East is fully caught up with UHPC facades. India is just starting up. And busting myths, right? So UHPC can be, it's not necessary that it just needs to be precast. You can do a lot of cast in places. It's possible with pre-mixed UHPCs. You can do it at heights. You can cast in place very easily. I don't want to go through this, but this is a pumping video. Let me just show if, let me see if I can move a little further. All the UHPC was made in transit mixer, right? Not even a heavy duty mixer. In the transit mixer, this was mixed, and you can see UHPC coming out 60 meters high, right? So it can be easily pumped. That's very nice, no segregation at all. I'm gonna just move forward to the next slide. Curing. You absolutely don't need steam curing. You can do steam curing, but you don't need it. You can do water curing. You can also use curing compound, right? So here you see this was on site with water curing, 28 days average strength over a period of 30 days of casting, right? With so many cubes, 186 MPa average on site with a standard deviation of 8 MPa. Workability can be good. You can design your mixes to be very workable. You can do that. Construction methodology could be very simple. If in a precast plant, of course, you can devise your precast plant to do that. But if doing on a site, you can buy anything from, they market a good UHPC premix and you can put it in a mixer and mix it. And you can pour it via a bucket. It's pretty easy to do that. Like I said, this was the very first project in India to be done with UHPC steel sections. It was a post tension, unbonded post tension actually. This is another project here in Mira Road, Mumbai, wherein a lot of short girders, 8.4 meter long beams with a huge opening. See, you could get the advantage of opening for putting HVAC ducts through and sprinkler pipe, through. A lot of girders were made, about 84 girders were made and put on that site. Cast in place UHPC, 19-meter long girders were also done. This is a bungalow where somebody wanted UHPC, right, for its durability. So you can see ribbed slabs over here, and you can see also these staircases, folded steps that were made in UHPC. There's another project wherein the slabs were in RC, the girders were in UHPC. You can see the slabs behind if you really can. And I'm just going to keep pushing forward. Regular contractor was doing the work. UHPC was again done in transit mixes. And you can see that everything was put together, pulled up, and the girders you can see now, the slabs you can see now, and all these joints that you see, these joints were then automatically, they were filled with UHPC so as to form a monolithic composite connection between slab to slab and to the girders. Now imagine when here you do not need any topping slab, right? Typically we put a topping screed of about 75 mm on precast, but here you get a fully composite connection, continuity of your deck, and so you do not need any topping slab and precast. So that was kind of the last slide. So here I summarize together. use UHPC to add value to your project, use UHPC to solve problems, and you definitely can replace some structural steel with UHPC. In fact, there's a project going on in Chambers. Somebody wants to see that, where columns of, huge columns, 800 by 1600 columns of M80 grade have been replaced with 750 by 750 columns of UHPC, right? And you can now think of UHPC as an alternate to composite steel construction also, where in tall buildings you have these composite columns with concrete and structural steel. You don't need to do that anymore. You can just use UHPC to make your columns and just keep going ahead. So that's all I have, and I'm just going to stop share here. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Satish sir. That was, whatever a major part of what you said was music to the ears of architects. Because if you can have bridges and museums and what have you using UHPC, well, that's exciting times ahead for us. And now I request again the same question. We are, I think, around 10 minutes behind schedule. So I'm a bit concerned about that. However, I'll request Pandey sir if he wants to ask any questions.
Priyaji, there are certain questions in the question and answer box, so we can take up at the end of it.
I think so. I think so.
Yeah.
Jain sir, I think we'll take the questions at the end. Is that
There
fine?
There are 5 questions for him, Satish, in the question answer box.
Okay. So I
Okay.
think, friends, I would like to announce that we'll take the questions at the end, and we can carry on from there. Satish sir, thanks a lot for the brilliant presentation. Very happy to have you here,
Thank you
and
very much.
very nice seeing all those images which you showed in the end. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
So friends, we are just 10 minutes behind schedule, but very excited to introduce the next speaker to all of you. I'll just take 10 seconds to tell you about the story of stone, paper, scissors. How many of you do not know? I'm sure everybody has heard of the story of stone, paper, scissors, which was a game that all of us play. So the stone can break the scissors, and the scissors can cut the paper, and the paper can wrap the stone. So why am I telling you all this? Because sometimes we reach a stage really are stuck somewhere and you don't know how to resolve things. However we like it, we need a legal framework in whatever profession we are doing. So this is just details, of course, will be told to us by our next guest. He's Advocate Mihir. Mihir, hi. Here comes my formal introduction of your. Right. So, Advocate Mihir Govilkar from Govilkar and Associates. The firm dates from 3 generations. That's something I think to applaud. In fact, when Vinay Govilkar, who was Mihir's grandfather, started the practice 60 years ago. I mean, just think of what our country was at that time. His grandson Mihir, of course, one can say is taking it into the future. The legacy continues with a mix of the old and new, with an eye on the future. Mihir completed his bachelor's in law and bachelor's in management studies from Mumbai University. He also has a master's in business administration from Johnson and Wales, USA, and an MSc in finance from France. He speaks French, by the way. His understanding and knowledge of the fields of banking and finance has, of course, been an invaluable asset. With a global outlook and experience of having worked and lived in multiple places in the world, including US and Europe, Mihir likes to help clients to get a better understanding of the legal systems. Why? So that they can concentrate on their core profession better and happier. It's a matter of great happiness to all of us sitting here, friends, that Mihir's father, Raj Shekhar Govilkar, has been designated as a senior advocate by the Bombay High Court and is now a part of an exclusive club of maybe around 60 to 70 such designated senior advocates in the entire state of Maharashtra and Goa. Mihir, please accept our congratulations and regards. Today, friends, Mihir will be his informal self and probably not the legal eagle one usually associates an advocate to be. Nevertheless, we shall be getting glimpses into his vast treasure of legal knowledge with respect to the field of construction, design, and what have you, when I interview him on the importance of what we have called as the Suraksha Kavach of legal systems and framework. Mihir, you can just say hi to the audience and then we will begin.
Good evening, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here on this platform to speak to all of you and hopefully be able to answer some questions.
Yes. So can we start?
Yes, of course.
Okay, yeah, just give me a minute. Okay, Mihir, could we start by you telling us in a very an overview, one can say, why you think design and construction professionals need to be really vigilant and aware of legal processes, because we generally are so caught up in our creative juices that we often do not give much attention to this unless there are incidents like a slab collapse or something, not someone not paying your fees. Now I'm talking extremely general, so the question could be, why and how do you think construction and design professionals need to be vigilant about this side of their profession?
Yes. So if I may be so bold as to say, all of us in our respective professions feel that our professions are so different and so apart from each other that our needs and requirements are different. Yes, of course, when it comes to your specific professional tasks and functions, yes, they are different. But we all operate in an environment which is regulated and controlled and monitored by our legislations that exist in the country, right? So whether you are an architect or an engineer, or whether you are an interior designer, or whether you are a lawyer like me or a doctor, whatever it might be, every profession is governed by certain laws. For example, architects are covered by the Architects Act, the lawyers are covered by the Advocates Act, and so on and so forth. At the core of everything, this is of course my opinion, but I don't believe that it is too far away from the truth. At the core of everything lies our basic understanding of how we interact in society. This understanding has been formulated into what is known as the Contract Act. Whenever we interact with anyone, there is a give and take. If you enter into an agreement or a contract with somebody, if you enter into a project with somebody, even if there are any students on this webinar, if you have joined a college, you have entered into a contract with that college. So believe it or not, whatever you do in life is governed by a give and take, a mutual understanding of what you will be expected to do, and then what you expect to get in return. So be it design or construction professionals, everybody deserves to have some kind of understanding of the law and how they interact with each other. So it is important that wherever you function, you need to understand the framework within which you function and how that may impact your professional life. And sometimes now, for example, a few years ago, there was a bridge collapse at CST. And there was a huge inquiry after that. And then some professionals were charged with negligence and improper conduct and so on and so forth. So whether or not there are extraneous circumstances and considerations, there may be maybe repercussions for you. Of course, in this situation, those people who have been charged with criminal offense on their professional lives, but also on their personal lives. So, Priya Madam, I hope this kind of answers
Absolutely.
your question.
Very much, in fact, because since you mentioned incidents happening, now I speak for architects. Of course, Pandeji will again ask more questions. Some things are ambiguous and some things are specifically and clearly laid down under whether it's the Architects Act or any other act. Can you give us an example of, without naming names if you want, without being going too much into details, any firms or any companies whom you help to streamline their legal framework with respect to clients, on-site work, a project stuck or something, and because of the legal thing being very clear, it was smooth sailing?
See, when we talk about this aspect about how we helped any particular entity or an individual, it is, how do I put it? It is always a mutual understanding and mutual, how do you put it? We have to work together with that entity. Whichever is the company, we have to understand what their pain points are. So for every company, it is going to be different. Now, because of confidentiality, of course, I cannot divulge the exact details. But then most of the time, we help companies understand the legal requirements of entering into any project. There are contracts, most importantly. There are non-disclosure agreements. There are non-compete agreements. There are tender documents where the language is so ambiguous and vague that it's impossible sometimes to understand. I have a friend right from college who is in the entertainment industry. Now, he does have some pedigree in the entertainment industry, but he's not doing the exact same thing that his family is doing. He's doing something a bit different. So he kind of, although he has that last name, he does have to make his own mark. And even so, he is now seeking my advice in dealing with different multinational companies. And one of the examples he told me was that because he sought my advice and uh, explained to that company's person who he was dealing with that, okay, I've gone through the contract, now these are my concerns and this is what we would request you to change. Now, although the contract was not changed at all, what happened was that the company representative, he told him that, just because I see that you have actually taken the trouble to go through the contract and have sought legal advice, tells me that I can actually trust you because you're serious about this and you're not taking this casually. So now this is this happened last year. So, and because of that, he told me that Mihir, I actually got that contract over others who were competing with me because they saw that I was actually sincere about it and I was taking the contract seriously and I was trying to understand what my responsibilities were. And then based on that, he got further work from that MNC. So for example, there are sometimes I have a friend who manufactures high precision electronic equipments, and he has to import a lot of items a lot of times. And because of the challenges at the docks and at the port authority, where they tend to rake up something or the other. Now, whether it is legal or not, that's a separate issue. And whether that is above the board or under the table, that is also another issue. But we also try to help him in navigate those challenges. And that can also mean filing an actual case in the relevant forum, or it can mean going and talking to the authority, or it can mean sending a notice. So there are several ways that lawyers can help the business. Now, what I tell my business clients, particularly who are not, you have not come to me for filing a case, but they have come to me to understand what to do in a particular situation. I always tell them two things. The first thing is I'll give you a legal advice. And after that legal advice, the decision is simple. You do what is required or you don't do it, right? Now, if you do what is required or whether you don't do it, that is based on the second aspect of the situation, which is the business sense. Now, whether taking that action makes business sense for you or not. So if you choose to take a risk, that is a business decision. But you have taken the risk knowing that you are taking that risk. You are not going into it blindly. Now, I have another client who invests heavily in real estate. The amounts are huge. What he told me was that, Dekh Mir, I assume Hindi is okay. So he told me that, Dekh Mir, even if I'm signing, मैं death warrant भी अपना sign कर रहा हूँ ना तो भी मुझे चलेगा, लेकिन मुझे पता होना चाहिए कि मैं क्या कर रहा हूँ. Now he has been dealing with very high profile builders and developers in the country, and some of the contracts, I like a term that has been taught to me by my father. It's an anecdote, and one day the judge had remarked in the court, the contract is so one-sided that it is surprising that it is written on two sides of the paper.
Okay.
So there are such
Yes.
contracts, and then, but like I said, whether it's an employee getting into an employment contract, you getting into a contract with a supplier or a vendor, or you becoming a supplier or a vendor to somebody, the contract is what will determine how your relationship goes forth.
Uh, Mihir, this is my question, and then I'm going to hand over to Pandey sir. My question is very simple. Most people, it's like you don't go to a doctor till you are so unwell that there's no other alternative. Similarly, most people, especially in the small size firms, do not think that they should go for arranging kind of any kind of a legal framework, or look out for it till the time comes when they have no recourse. So would you say that, if I would say that one generally assumes that legalities and legal eagles exist only for the big firms where there are contracts and agreements and people sitting around the boardroom, which is necessary for their functioning. Would you think that small and mid-sized companies also should consciously look into this? You said this in the beginning also, but would you say it again?
Yes, most definitely. A lot of the challenges are actually faced by smaller sized companies, or MSMEs as we call them. What happens is, because as you say, MSMEs don't opt for legal advice at the start, or they don't have a system of seeking legal advice in different matters of their functioning. Because again, as you said, they are so involved in their creative aspirations and creative work that they don't have the time to look into this. But that is exactly where then they face challenges, and ultimately the situation then leads them to a point where they say, okay, forget it, we have made a mistake, now we'll just accept this loss. Now this is what happens a lot of times, and then people have let go of lakhs and even crores because they think that, okay, it's a big company, we are going to maybe get a lot more revenue from them in the future, so we'll just let this go. We'll think of this as whatever you call it. You call it marketing, or whether you call it relationship building or BD or whatever you call it. So then they have to term that loss as that, under that head. But we tell our clients, the small businesses particularly, that just like you have a family doctor, you should have a family lawyer. There are challenges that come up in your life all the time, and of course you have the internet available, but then just like doctors tell
Yes,
these days that people come to them having read
yes,
everything
yes.
online, and so such is the case with lawyers as well. And people have come to us telling, oh, I have read this judgment online, and this is exactly the same case as us, so you do this and do that, and then that should get us the judgment. But of course, if this was so easy, then all lawyers would
Absolutely.
be
Exactly.
all lawyers would be out of work.
Right, right.
So that's why I definitely suggest that. And there are uh, I'm kind of blowing my own trumpet here, but there are people like me who have a established practice, are, like I said, kind of blowing my own trumpet here, but are good enough. And so there are multiple lawyers like me who definitely can help such MSMEs. And if you actually go to the big law firms, I know of a law firm, I'll not take that name. They actually do a credit check
Okay.
before they take on a client, to know whether that client will be able to pay their fees or not.
Yes.
And they do a background check also. So of course there are such firms as well, but then there are so many other firms and so many individual practitioners, or smaller law firms, which definitely MSMEs can take help from and can certainly afford.
Exactly. That was my question. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. The affordability factor is always a case, but then you have to kind of take into consideration whether you believe in the old adage of prevention is better than cure or
Yes.
not.
Yes. Right. So Mihir, thank you very much. These were very general questions, and the feel itself is that you cannot go into details until the detail
Yes.
is there. So on this note, I would hand over to Pandeyji, who has some very relevant questions. Pandeyji, over to you. And in I
Sure,
think
sir.
10 minutes we will wrap up.
Sure.
Mehri, thank you. My questions are very mundane, very simple, more from construction engineer point of view. One thing I would like to tell that most of the engineers, they never try to understand even ABCD of law. We don't even know that by law we are understood to know law. Whether we have read or we have, the judiciary or law does not consider that you have not read law in your entire life.
Correct.
It assumes that you are aware of all the laws of India. So, am I
Yes.
correct for that?
Yes, sir. Ignorance of law is not an excuse.
Not an excuse. Secondly, most of us, we don't know that agreement is such a vast term that when we enter a hotel and as soon as we order from a menu, there is a verbal agreement,
Yes.
right? So these concepts are also not known that actually you have already entered a agreement. If you go into a bus and you take a ticket and pay for this, you have already agreed with the bus operator that they will take you to destination.
Correct.
That agreement is already there. So, and we also don't know what is the difference between agreement and contract. So, can you tell us something about agreement and contract?
Yes, sir, definitely. So there are multiple stages of how an agreement is reached. So I will not get into that because that is technical and frankly very boring. But an agreement is basically an offer is made, it is accepted, and then that becomes an agreement. Whenever in an agreement, there has to be a give and take, right? And of course, it has to be legal. Now, if an agreement is not legal, then it is a void agreement, right? In general parlance, we use the terms agreement, we use contract, we use MOU. But in law, there are only two terms, agreement and contract. Even if you call it an MOU, it doesn't change the nature of the document. It still remains a contract. There are certain essential conditions that are required to be fulfilled. So, and again, coming back to the very basic, if an agreement is legal, it is called a contract. If it is not legal, it is not a contract. It is as simple as that.
Agreement, but all agreements
all agreements are not contracts. So as you said earlier, one thing is in India, even oral agreements are valid. So if you orally agree with somebody to do something and that person says that, okay, if you do something, I'll do this for you. So there is a quid pro quo, right? That agreement is a contract and it can be enforced. However, if there is no intention to perform the contract, then your only option is to go to court. But in those circumstances, to enforce an oral agreement, it's extremely difficult. But again, for example, if you are in a board meeting and then you enter into a contract and then oral agreement and then you start acting on that, right?
Okay, then it is deemed.
Then there is deemed, then there it is considered that yes, this was said and this was done and people have started acting on it.
There is a demonstrable action on that.
Yes, there is a demonstrable action. But now what happens is, how do you measure the specifications of the contract? Then if that is not written down, then that will cause certain problems. And ultimately, God forbid, if the dispute goes beyond your negotiations, it cannot be resolved through negotiations, then you go to the court. Now, in the court, what will happen is you'll have to prove that these were the terms of the agreement that both parties had agreed upon. And then how do you prove that? Then you'll have to produce witnesses, and then it becomes very complex. So that is why the contract that you enter into, it is very important to understand the terms and conditions.
And clarity.
Exactly. Now, what has happened is, unfortunately, in the month of March, I had attended a conference in Goa. It was a Commonwealth Lawyers Association conference. All the countries of the Commonwealth were represented in that conference. And I was on the panel talking about legal drafting and the clarity in legal drafting.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, throughout the Commonwealth, over the course of the years, what has happened is the language of the laws has been extremely complicated. And that has led to complications as well. So now the trend is to simplify the language in the law and in contracts as much as possible, so that everybody can understand it more easily.
There is a very funny thing that if you write that now it is witnessed that are herein under and hereby, I
Yes.
hereby, so people think that this is the agreement.
Yes.
Or contract. So actually it is simply not required.
It is not required.
Yeah.
But then these are certain practices that have been followed, and people believe
Yeah,
that unless this is written, it is not a valid document.
It's perception.
It's a perception.
And even many people think that if it is on a stamp paper, it is a enforceable contract.
Now,
Just
as far
because
as
it is a
but
stamp
as far as stamp duty is concerned, what happens is, so
paper.
stamp duty is required on all documents.
All that. Registration of that.
No, registration is required only for certain kinds of documents, mostly where
Otherwise, notary can do that. Or even without that, it is.
no. So what happens is, there are certain specific kinds of documents where registration is compulsory. For example, when there is a transfer of right in immovable property. So as a thumb rule, we say that if the document talks about transfer of property, immovable property, not movable property, then registration is compulsory. Otherwise, registration is optional. Right? As far as stamp duty is concerned, stamp duty is mandatory on all documents. Now, the value of the stamp duty is given in the schedule to the Stamp Act.
For different purposes.
For different purposes, it's a calculation, and you go according to the calculation. Now, about the notary, what the notary does is the extent of the import of a notary stamp is only that I am a notary here. I am authorized by the government to say that the person who is signing before me is indeed that person.
Yes.
So the notary only identifies the person signing before him.
Not the
That's
content.
all. That's all. The notary does not say anything about the contents of the document. He does not authenticate the document.
Correct.
So the notary only says, only identifies the person signing before him. That's all. So that is another misconception, that if a document is notarized, it is valid and authenticated. No, that's not true.
Right. And also that engineers need to understand, I think concept of accountability. Yeah, because there may be, say, mishap or fatality, accident, loss of limb. So in those cases, what are the liabilities of the supervisor? What is accountability of the supervisor? So that is something which each engineer should know, I think.
Yes, definitely. So a basic understanding of labor laws is essential. And I believe that especially in the construction industry, the people who are managing labor have to be given some kind of basic essential training on what the labor laws are. Because if there is any transgression or contravention of the labor laws, ultimately the person who is in charge of the whole, in charge of labor, and ultimately the company who has engaged the labor will be held vicariously liable. So the company needs to understand it, and then further it needs to percolate down to the person who is actually implementing it. Same thing goes, I'm sorry if I'm skipping the topic a bit, but the same thing goes for contracts when I talk about percolation. When the company enters into a contract, the person who is actually on the ground needs to understand properly what the terms of the contract are to be able to enforce it.
Right.
So even for labor laws, they need to have a basic understanding of what the labor laws are, what they can or cannot do.
Now, most of the time, in construction, I'm only speaking about construction site
Of
and
course,
people,
of course.
construction engineers who were to deal with contract and were to deal with extra item and they have to deal with deviations and not in scope, whether it is in scope or not in scope, like that kind of situation. So if the construction engineers and these people they read something about contract laws and law of fairness and process of mediation, then probably at side they can have better conversation with each other with less enmity and with less kind of vague kind of
Definitely, Mr. Pandey. You have
argument.
you have touched a very fond topic of mine, which is mediation. So I am a certified mediator myself, and my focus for the last several years has been to promote mediation. And mediation has nothing to do with the law, really. It is a process of resolution of disputes through basically talking,
Mutual,
through talking, through discussions. And of course, it's a developed skill, it's a developed art to a certain extent. And what mediation does is it tries to help resolve disputes before they escalate or before sometimes even they happen. So an outcropping of mediation is something called as dispute systems design, where companies can design their systems in such a way that disputes can be addressed at the lowest rung before they escalate. Now, and if they escalate, there has to be a proper escalation matrix for that. Now, I see escalation matrices on different websites, especially banks, where they have given a list of people that you can contact if you're not happy with one, you can go to the next, and
right?
that's not really an escalation matrix, because
That's
you're
very
just
natural.
you're it feels like you're just shifting the buck from one person to another. But not my personal experience, not just my personal experience, but it's a experience of people also I know, that the escalation matrix has not really helped, because it's not, the escalation matrix is not just about okay, if you're not happy with this level, you just go to the next level. It is about understanding what has happened at this level, what were the possible resolutions that could have been provided at the first level, and then if they are not provided, then you have gone to the second level. So there has to be a proper setup of that, a proper structure for that. So it's not just creating multiple levels, it has to be a well thought out process. So if that can be created in organizations, and it need not be a multi hierarchy organization, it can be a small organization as well, where you can definitely try and help set up a system in your office where as soon as disputes you think are arising, you can immediately address those by certain already set up plans and procedures. And these disputes can be internal within the workplace between your own employees, or it can be external as well with your third party stakeholders.
That's
So
very good.
I hate
Now
to
I
interrupt
come
this, Pandeyji. We have to wrap up now. It's
All right.
6:47.
good. Thank you.
So, so Jain sir, if it's okay with you, I'll just you can say something and then I'll say the vote of thanks.
No, you please go ahead. I will say what
Okay, okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have had a roller coaster session today, and we touched on multiple places. It was like a world tour where you saw the cathedrals, you saw the lakes, you saw the mountains, you saw the deserts, and all of this is coming together to make us more knowledgeable, more enriched, and better human beings who can learn to think outside the box. I would like to offer profuse thanks to each and every person who logged in, who registered, who was part of this wonderful journey. And I would like to end again by thanking Jayant Kulkarni of Epicons, thanking all of you, everyone who made this possible. A huge round of applause and thanks to our speakers, I'll quickly tell their names again. Engineer Tanvi Auti, Advocate Mihir Govilkar, who just finished, Engineer Satish Jain, Engineer Varun Raze, and Engineer Sunny Surlekar. Thank you very much. And I'll end by 3 quotes, which I really love. They are not like each other, but I would like to share them with you. The first quote is by the well-known Malcolm Gladwell, who says, if everyone has to think outside the box, maybe it's the box that needs fixing. Well, I do not really agree with that, so I'll tell you the second quote. It's by an author whom I don't really remember. She says, or he says, think not outside the box, think outside the room where the box is. And now my very, very favorite quote, which is coming up, and then I'll just say, have a nice weekend. And it comes from Jonathan Livingston Seagull, the famous novel by Richard Bach. And says, don't believe what your eyes are telling you. All they show is limitation. Look with your understanding. Find out what you already know, and you will see the way to fly. Friends, ladies and gentlemen, what we all want to do is really fly, isn't it? Have a wonderful weekend. Have a wonderful Sunday and a Saturday. Thank you very much. Namaste.
Can we get a thank you slide?
Yes, sir.
Friends, Priya has concluded. I will just say 4 words. We, Epicons Consultant, we offer services of structural design, proof checking of tall building, structural audit, assessment and NDT, concrete quality monitoring, project management consultancy, architecture and detail engineering. And of course, our passion is training through EFC. Now we did not get enough time for question and answer, but I am going to send feedback form to all. And if you have any question unanswered, you can put in that feedback form and we'll see to it that we'll send it to respective speaker and get answer for that. Similarly, we'll be requesting you to suggest a new topic, which can be extension of this topic, or it can be totally new. It is up to you what to suggest. We will try to go by majority and try to select a topic which is beneficial to all. So with this, say that our webinar is closed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Bye, everyone. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.